Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Brainwashing of My Dad, How the Rise of the Right-Wing Media Changed a Father and Divided Our Nation and How We Can Fight Back by Jen Senko. This is from Chapter 6, How Talk Radio Hijacked My Dad. In 1984, Reagan was reelected in a landslide victory against liberal Democrat Walter Mondale. That year was also when everything began to change for my dad and our family. In 1984, Dad retired from his job with the federal government at age 62. Both my parents missed being near the shore, so they moved back to New Jersey and settled in Toms River, a town where there was a large retired population. Still energetic, my father got a part-time engineering job 3 or 4 days a week, necessitating a long solo commute by car. He didn't want to waste time on music while driving. He wanted to be stimulated mentally, and he discovered talk radio to keep himself company. At the time, Bob Grant was the dominant talk radio personality. Often called the conservative radio, Grant was an openly racist, sexist, far-right shock jock. On his WABC radio show, he referred to blacks and Hispanics as savages. He believed them to be inferior, and he once even called Martin Luther King Jr. a slimeball. With his combative and testy style, he was considered a pioneer of the talk radio format. Soon, Grant became my dad's commuting buddy. I didn't know Bob Grant from Joe Namath, but I did know I didn't care for his style of yelling at callers or hanging up on them if they disagreed with him. My mother was not a fan of Grant's either, and she delighted in telling me the story of how she ran into him one day. She was at the Ocean County Mall eatery, sitting at a table having lunch when she saw Grant walk in. She recognized him, and when he passed her table, she asked, "You're Bob Grant, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Oh, my husband likes you, but I don't." He had been walking away and turned to look back at my mother and gave a little laugh. She said she just sat there at the table and did not smile back. Gradually, it seemed my dad started becoming more agitated after listening to Bob Grant. Eventually, he became consistently more irritable, excitable, and easy to anger. Little did we know, a metamorphosis was beginning. Along with massive deregulation in the communications industry, there were several other factors that led to talk radio's explosion of popularity in the 1980s. The first was that music had moved from the AM dial to the high-fidelity sound of FM, and thus left a void on the AM dial. Broadcasters realized that filling that blank air, how the richest democracy in the world abandons Americans. And what got me started on this was last weekend I was watching TV, and I guess I was in a curmudgeonly mood because I was like questioning everything. What? You know, how can they? And suddenly this commercial comes on for a company that buys life insurance policies. And there's this older couple in the commercial, and one of them says, you know, to the camera, or says to the other, you know, we learned that we could sell our policy when a friend did so to pay their medical bills. And I'm going, wait a minute. We're the richest country in the world. The richest billionaires in the world. We have more money than anybody. I mean, we got more money than God. It's just, the United States is a fabulously rich nation. And senior citizens are having to sell their life insurance policies, depriving their children of any kind of inheritance or you know, benefit, you know, help at all, just to stay alive, just to pay their medical bills. And you know, I thought this isn't right. You know, you don't have people having to sell their life insurance policies in Taiwan or in South Korea or in Japan or in Costa Rica or in any of the European Union countries, because the total number of people who went bankrupt because somebody got sick in those countries is zero. It's 500,000 people every year in the United States. So I'm looking at this ad going, wow, this is really an ad about how sick and dysfunctional America's our healthcare system is. Why is that? In fact, I posted this over at HartmannReport.com, and one of the people who reads our newsletter posted a reply saying that he's recovering from COVID and has been binge watching TV, and he's been binge watching Breaking Bad. And it's been a long time since Breaking Bad was a hot thing, you know. But the premise is that this guy had cancer. This high school science teacher, he had cancer, and he needed a lot of money to pay for his treatment, because this is America, right? And we don't have a national health care system. And so he started cooking meth to pay for his cancer treatment. It's just, it's, how do we miss this stuff, right? Then another ad comes out for a company that sells reverse mortgages. Now, Tom Selleck, I'm sure, is a very nice guy, but are there really that many seniors who are now destitute and thus must wipe out the largest store of their wealth and their children's inheritance just to retire? Then came an ad for the Shriners Hospital for Children. And, they're doing wonderful work, right? Taking care of kids who are born with birth defects and deformities. But why are we crowdsourcing health care for children in crisis? Why isn't that just like routinely provided for with our tax dollars? And then there was this ad for Danny Thomas's hospital, the one that he started. And this one is dealing with kids with cancer, and they're doing a lot of great cancer research, and God bless them. But again, why aren't we all funding stuff like this? Why do we need this in the richest country in the world? I mean, why don't we just have billionaires pay their income taxes? Oh, that's right. Since the Reagan Revolution, billionaires no longer pay income taxes for all practical purposes. And then that ad was followed by another one for colostrum. It's a milk product that is supposed to boost your immune system. And the ad's pitch lady said something like, there are over 90,000 chemicals in our environment that haven't been tested for toxicity. And damn, I thought she's right. Most of the developed world uses the precautionary principle. You've got to prove something's safe before you put it in our food supply. That's how it works in Europe. But here in the United States, you don't have to prove anything. You just pour it on, dump it in the air, put it in the water, put it in their food. Line the packages that we get our take-home food with PFAS chemicals. No big deal. We'll just, we'll continue poisoning people until finally we get sued. That's how it works in America. It's the libertarian strategy. I mean, watch Dark Waters, the movie with Mark Ruffalo, if you want to see how this works, how the DuPont poisoned an entire community. And then in the next commercial break, Jeff Bridges comes on. He's a great guy. He's a great actor. And he's pitching a charity called No Kid Hungry, which turns out is a very, it's a high-quality charity with a really good rating. But again, why do we have kids who are hungry in America? 1 in 5 American children is either suffering from hunger or malnutrition right now in the richest country in the world. It costs us an estimated $167 billion a year because of the damage that's being done to the brains and bodies of these kids. It costs us $167 billion a year, and the total cost to end all childhood poverty in the United States is hunger in the United States is $25 billion. The amount of money that Musk, Bezos, Gates, and Zuckerberg added to their money bins just since 2020 is over $300 billion. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Brainwashing of My Dad, How the Rise of the Right-Wing Media Changed a Father and Divided Our Nation and How We Can Fight Back by Jen Senko. This is from Chapter 6, How Talk Radio Hijacked My Dad. In 1984, Reagan was reelected in a landslide victory against liberal Democrat Walter Mondale. That year was also when everything began to change for my dad and our family. In 1984, Dad retired from his job with the federal government at age 62. Both my parents missed being near the shore, so they moved back to New Jersey and settled in Toms River, a town where there was a large retired population. Still energetic, my father got a part-time engineering job 3 or 4 days a week, necessitating a long solo commute by car. He didn't want to waste time on music while driving. He wanted to be stimulated mentally, and he discovered talk radio to keep himself company. At the time, Bob Grant was the dominant talk radio personality. Often called the conservative radio, Grant was an openly racist, sexist, far-right shock jock. On his WABC radio show, he referred to blacks and Hispanics as savages. He believed them to be inferior, and he once even called Martin Luther King Jr. a slimeball. With his combative and testy style, he was considered a pioneer of the talk radio format. Soon, Grant became my dad's commuting buddy. I didn't know Bob Grant from Joe Namath, but I did know I didn't care for his style of yelling at callers or hanging up on them if they disagreed with him. My mother was not a fan of Grant's either, and she delighted in telling me the story of how she ran into him one day. She was at the Ocean County Mall eatery, sitting at a table having lunch when she saw Grant walk in. She recognized him, and when he passed her table, she asked, "You're Bob Grant, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Oh, my husband likes you, but I don't." He had been walking away and turned to look back at my mother and gave a little laugh. She said she just sat there at the table and did not smile back. Gradually, it seemed my dad started becoming more agitated after listening to Bob Grant. Eventually, he became consistently more irritable, excitable, and easy to anger. Little did we know, a metamorphosis was beginning. Along with massive deregulation in the communications industry, there were several other factors that led to talk radio's explosion of popularity in the 1980s. The first was that music had moved from the AM dial to the high-fidelity sound of FM, and thus left a void on the AM dial. Broadcasters realized that filling that blank airspace with mainstream news wouldn't make much money. However, entertainment made money, and talk radio was entertainment at its finest, even when it masqueraded as news coverage. Human conversation didn't benefit from high-fidelity sound the way music did, so talk radio filled the void on the AM radio waves perfectly. The second contributor to talk radio's rise was the new accessibility of satellite technology, allowing anyone to broadcast a show nationally. And the third was the fact that when 1-800 numbers became available, you could have callers call in from all over the country. These factors combined to make a pretty powerful storm. The format of talk radio was, of course, not new. The format first debuted in the 1920s, continuing with Father Charles Coughlin's controversial and anti-Semitic radio broadcasts in the 1930s. Coughlin has often been referred to as the father of hate radio, and he paved the way for all that has come in his medium. Many of the most famous conservative talk radio personalities modeled themselves after the 1950s sensation Joe Pyne. His show, It's Your Nickel, consisted of Pyne debating his opinions with people calling in. Calls often culminated with him insulting the caller, to the delight of his audience. The format of talk radio evolved from there, but many of the most popular shows and hosts, including Bob Grant, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck, have stuck with the confrontational tone and high-emotion interactions that these early hosts introduced. There haven't been many successful liberal talk radio hosts. Ed Schultz, Randy Rhoads, and Alan Colmes tried to make inroads, but simply failed to draw a large audience, in quotes. You may wonder why conservative talk radio programs have been so phenomenally popular while equivalent liberal shows have foundered. Aside from big money to support it, the secret seems to lie in the inflammatory approach favored by these so-called conservative hosts. Abram Brown of Forbes says of liberal talk radio shows, it's not the same thing as a Limbaugh or a Hannity. It's more general, not really railing against the system. No one's yelling, we need to get rid of the Republicans. They're the worst thing that happened in this country. But you'll hear conservative radio hosts say that about liberals on their programs. Brown makes another good point that speaks to that. Tell your audience that the mainstream media is corrupt and biased, that there's more than that there's all the more reason to turn to your conservative talk radio to get the truth. Anger is a hot commodity. Finding an enemy is even hotter. Or as Ailes might say, it's the emotions, stupid. He did not actually say that. A little known but very chilling example of how powerfully influential radio can be is the 1994 Rwandan genocide, where an estimated 800,000 citizens were brutally murdered by their fellow citizens, the Hutus. This happened after an intense radio campaign that started in 1993 dehumanized and demonized one group, the Tutsis. Militia groups were formed, and police and soldiers joined them in the killing. Samantha Power, who later served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, said killers often carried a machete in one hand and a transistor radio in the other hand. Dad discovers Rush Limbaugh. About a year or so after working part-time in his long commute, my dad officially retired. The book, The Brainwashing of My Dad, by Jen Senko.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Thursday, Wabbits, Wabbits, Wabbits. It's the first day of August, and well, a lot going on in the world right now. Major prisoner swap. Oh, by the way, just a heads up, tomorrow, in the third hour of the program, in honor of cat ladies and dog dudes for Harris, we're going to have Dr. Marty on the program, who is going to, he's the famous veterinarian. For the entire hour, he will be taking your calls about pet questions. I know we've got a lot of dog and cat owners out there, and every now and then it's nice to take a break from politics, especially in the dead of summer, although it's not been quite the quiet summer that we had all anticipated. Anyhow, a lot going on in the news. I'll get to that in just a moment. Also, Georgia's latest voter suppression tactic, a blueprint for disenfranchisement. We'll get to that in just a moment as well. Or actually, it looks like we'll get to that. Yeah, no, it's topic 2. In the top of the second hour of the program today, Phil Ittner is going to be with us live from Kyiv, Ukraine. Sounds like things are getting better, and also there's reports that the F-16s took off. Also, why Josh Shapiro may be the right person for the Kamala ticket. We'll talk about that in the second hour. In the third hour of the program, is the Fed chair trying to get Donald Trump elected by keeping interest rates high? And, of course, your calls throughout all 3 hours today. So, a lot to talk about. Kamala Harris just tweeted out, growing up, my mom made Punjab chole and my dad made collard greens, while Donald Trump's dad made sure black people couldn't rent his apartments. Yes, really. There you go. Yeah. Okay. I guess that, it's really a huge news story that Donald Trump went full racist yesterday at this Association of Black Journalists. And questioning Kamala Harris's heritage. It kind of raises the question, well, actually, some people have pointed out at various times Donald Trump has claimed that he's Swedish, and then he's claimed that he's German, and then he's also claimed that he's Irish. That's sort of not quite the same. I'm wondering, well, this is Jane of the North on Twitter. She says, I didn't know he was orange until a number of years ago when he happened to turn orange. I respect either one, but he obviously doesn't, because all of a sudden he became an orange person. I think somebody should look into that. Yeah, right. But the question, I suppose, for Trump lovers, and I think, their defense of him, and it's all over right-wing media right now, and all over the Trumposphere. And he's doubling down, by the way. He tweeted out a picture this morning or Truth Social, a picture this morning of Kamala Harris with her mother's family, her mother and her mother's mother and, the father. They're all Indian and, brothers and sisters and things. And said, thank you, Kamala, for reminding us of your Indian ancestry. It raises the question, are J.D. Vance's kids Indian, Caucasian, or both? I mean, this whole Republican obsession with identity politics, well, really with race, I mean, that's the bottom line here, is just, I was going to say bizarre, but what it really is just racist. Louise and I were talking about this morning, and I pointed out, for 21 years on this program, our black callers have been saying there's a lot more white racists than you realize. You all think that most white people aren't racist. Not true. And, for much of my life, I would have been very skeptical about an assertion like that. But I can tell you over the last 20 years, I've figured it out. There are a hell of a lot more white racists out there than anybody expected. And Richard Nixon pandered to them with his whole law and order thing and his silent majority and his war on drugs. Ronald Reagan pandered to them, talking about young bucks and, in front of you in the checkout line at the supermarket getting steak with their food stamps. Doesn't that piss you off? And going to Philadelphia, Mississippi, where Goodman, Schwimmer, and Cheney were murdered, the three civil rights workers, and giving a speech to an all-white audience. His first speech of his presidential campaign in 1980, Ronald Reagan did, about states' rights, which, of course, was code for maintaining segregation. The only president that the only Republican president that I can think of that didn't explicitly pander to black and white racism was George W. Bush, although he certainly did a number on Muslims. But anyhow, there's that. There was a huge prisoner swap this morning. There's a Donald Trump piece to this too. You'll recall a couple of weeks ago, Trump came out and made the public statement that Putin was not going to release any prisoners until after the election because, once Trump is elected, Putin will do that as a thank you to him because they're such good friends. And, well, yeah, I mean, they are, dictators of a feather flock together and all that kind of thing. But Joe Biden pulled this thing off. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the Biden-Harris administration. The Russians released Paul Whelan, who, by the way, was taken by the Russians during Trump's presidency in 2018, and Trump did absolutely nothing to get him released, at least nothing that any of us can see in any news reports. He released Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, who was taken a little over a year ago, I believe. Putin also released Alsu Kirmashiva and Vladimir Kara-Murza. Vladimir Kara-Murza was an opposition politician who was sort of loosely aligned with Alexei Navalny. Alsu Kirmashiva, I don't know much about, other than that apparently she's a journalist. And I'm assuming it's a she. This is what President Biden said in a public statement this morning. He said, the deal that secured their freedom was a feat of diplomacy. All told, we've negotiated the release of 16 people from Russia, including 5 Germans and 7 Russian citizens who were political prisoners in their own country. Some of these women and men have been unjustly held for years. All have endured unimaginable suffering and uncertainty, and today their agony is over. He added, I'm grateful to our allies who stood with us through tough, complex negotiations to achieve this outcome, including Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey. This is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world whom you can trust and depend upon. And of course, that's kind of a sideways swipe or a backhand swipe at Donald Trump also, because, Trump basically disses all of our allies and just says, oh, let's just suck up to the dictators. So, there is that. Also, J.D. Vance is jumping in on, Trump playing the race card. This is pathetic. He told reporters, quote, it's hysterical about how much the media is overreacting. He said, the president doesn't do scripted BS stuff. He actually goes into hostile audiences. He answers tough questions. He pushes back against them, but he actually answers them. Actually, he didn't. I mean, that's why the reporters kept saying, Mr. Trump, you're not answering the question. Meanwhile, today, Chuck Schumer has scheduled a vote on the floor of the Senate for the child tax credit. Now, the child tax credit, it was originally passed as part of the American Rescue Act back in 2021. President Biden, a major accomplishment, got it through the House and Senate. Of course, the Democrats were in charge of both at the time. And it reduced child poverty in America by half. It lifted millions, tens of millions of children out of poverty in the United States. And what this tax credit does is it's a maximum refundable amount per child of $1,800 in 2023, $1,900 in 2024, and that would be because 2023 is because people this year will be filing last year's taxes. $1,900 in 2024 and $2,000 in 2025, and then after that it's inflation adjusted. The bill also expands the low-income housing tax credit that Senator Ron Wyden, my senator here from Oregon, says will, quote, add more than 200,000 affordable housing units nationwide. Chuck Schumer on the floor of the House, or the Senate rather, said, I urge my Republican colleagues not to stand in the way of helping parents and small businesses and families keep a roof over their heads when it's time to vote on Thursday, which is today. Kamala Harris tweeted back in March of 2023, our budget restores this tax credit permanently because we believe it's our duty to invest in our nation's children. Well, it wasn't permanent. It ended up expiring last year, or perhaps it was earlier this year. I believe it was earlier this year, and throwing those children right back into poverty. Now, in 2018, Kamala Harris, when she was in the Senate, co-sponsored that same legislation. It didn't pass then. And in 2023, she teamed up with fellow Democrats to pass a budget that would have made it permanent. That budget didn't pass, though, because of Republican obstruction. But today there will be a vote in the Senate, and J.D. Vance apparently is not going to show up for that vote. He went on Fox News on Monday and lied. I mean, this is just incredible. He went on Fox News and he said that Kamala Harris was, quote, calling for an end to the child tax credit. No, she's one of the authors of it. She's calling for it to be passed. But he, honest to God, he literally went on Fox News and right into the camera said Kamala Harris is calling for an end to the child tax credit. This guy is, I mean, there's just no bottom for these people. There's just no bottom. It's crazy. Alrighty. A new poll, by the way, showing abortion is a critical issue for Democratic voters. I'll share a little more of that with you after the break at the bottom of the hour. I've got to share with you my this amazing story of what's going on in Georgia right now, right after this. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back with you. By the way, you know, Trump had said that Putin would release when he was elected. This is Putin looking at the polls. That's what I believe. And welcome back, Jackie in Port Townsend, Washington. Hey, Jackie, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I recently took a road trip to Iowa. It was the end of June, and I was going to report on what happened. We decided that we would listen to the radio the whole time, AM, FM, from Port Townsend, Washington to northern Iowa. Mm-hmm. And there were actually some areas with no reception of AM or FM at all.
In Iowa?
From Idaho through, well...
Oh, on the route.
On the trip.
Yeah.
On the trip. And so from Idaho through Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota, it was mostly rock, country, and lots of religious and right-wing talk radio. Right. And quite often, the only stations were religious and right-wing. Yep. If we were lucky, we could get NPR, but not everywhere. And no wonder people don't know what the Biden administration is doing.
Oh, yeah. In 1980, the Republicans invested big in radio in low-population states. It's cheap, and it was the best investment they ever made.
And then I got to northern Iowa, and my home is near Mason City, Iowa, which has the Globe Gazette newspaper. Well, they were taken over by Alden Global Capital, and while I was there, or in that time period, they fired all the long-term writers, 25 to 40 years of experience with that paper, and now it's total right wing, and so they've got overnight They have shows for 6 hours, paranormal, UFO, Yeti, and ghosts. And then they have the farm news. And then they have right-wing financial investing. And then they have a conservative talk show. And then they have Sean Hannity. And then they have conspiracy theories. And that's their lineup.
Yeah.
So it's just a mess.
Yeah, no, this is the best investment Republican business people ever made, was because, you know, if you can control an extra 10 or 20 low population states and flip them right, which is what they did. I mean, you know, most of these states were voting Democratic just 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know. That's how it was when I grew up there. I mean, there was both Republicans and Democrats, and it was not crazy.
Yeah.
But I just have one comment about Trump and his press his interaction with the black reporters. You know, he claims he can stand up to Putin, and he can't even stand up to 3 black women.
Yeah, that's true. It's really true. And then he goes and steals the water bottle from one of them. Amazing. Jackie, thank you so much for the call and for the report from the northwestern tier of the United States. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. You know, between 40 years of Ronald Reagan's neoliberalism destroying the American middle class and all the just horrors of January 6th and the Trump presidency, America's waking up, and that's a really good thing. There's actually, you know, some books coming out about this. Mine, The Hidden History of Democracy. Neil Howe's The Fourth Turning is here. And it looks like a moment of American renaissance is upon us, if our media doesn't screw it up, which raises the question, can we have democracy and Fox News? Can the two coexist? Like, you know, when Fox News runs chyrons saying that essentially Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator who's throwing Trump in jail because he's his political opponent. There's a whole rant about this and an in-depth analysis of what can we do with regard to repairing our media here in the United States over at HartmannReport.com. I think you'll find it interesting. Check it out.
They say our voices count, but they shut the door. Lines stretch for miles in the heat and the cold. They change the rules, move the polls. They make it hard just to cast our vote, to play our part. All voter suppression, stealing our rights in the land of the free. We've got to fight for every voice to be heard, every vote to be cast, to break these chains, make our freedom last. Hockey laws and purges, they target the poor, minorities, the young, they silence the roar, they gerrymander districts, twist and turn.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Georgia's latest voter suppression tactic, a blueprint for disenfranchisement. In this article, I go through how Brian Kemp became governor. First off, he was the Secretary of State, and he purged thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people from the voting rolls, many of them black, and then won that election by 54,000 votes against Stacey Abrams in 2018. He had purged over 500,000 people from the voting rolls. Greg Palast hired the company that runs, that verifies addresses for Amazon, and found that 334,000 out of those 534,000 people, mostly black, had neither died nor moved, but they had sure lost their right to vote. In 2020, when Stacey Abrams challenged him again, he purged another 309,000 voters. Again, Greg Palast hired that company and found that 198,351 of them should not have been removed from the polls. So, you know, what's the latest trick? Well, this is getting weird. You know, they say that they're purging the voting rolls in order to, quote, keep the voting rolls clean. Why does that count? Because people like Brian Kemp in Georgia and Brad Raffensperger say that if people are registered in 2 states, they can vote in 2 states, and that's a bad thing. Well, people don't vote in 2 states. Louise and I have lived, we grew up in Michigan, we moved to New Hampshire, we moved to Germany, we moved to Georgia, we moved to Vermont, we moved to Oregon, we moved to Washington, D.C., and we moved back to Oregon, okay? In the last 50 years, that's what we've done. Not once have I notified a state that I left the state so that they could cancel my voter registration. Nobody does. So how do states know that people have moved? When your driver's license expires, they remove you from the voting rolls. It's real simple. Driver's licenses are typically 2, 3, or 5, 4 or 5 years. I mean, some of them max out at 5, but and so when they expire, they just take your name off the rolls. Or if there's a death notice, if somebody dies, and the states get those death notices, and then they remove you from the voting roll. That's real simple. There is no problem. For a couple of years, I was no doubt registered as a voter both in Washington, D.C. and in Oregon, but I didn't fly back to D.C. to cast a second vote. Nobody does. So why are the Republicans so upset about this, so concerned about this? Because it's a good excuse to purge Democratic voters off the voting rolls. So this week, they rolled out a new website where you can delete your own voter registration. All you have to know is your name, address, social security number, driver's license number, or date of birth. And then for a full hour on Monday, they posted all 6 million Georgia voters' full names, addresses, date of birth, social security numbers, and driver's licenses on that site. So any Republican who wants to purge anybody else from the voting rolls can simply download that list and then go in and say, oh, I'm Joe Blow, who lives in that Democratic district, or I'm John Doe, who lives in there, or Jane Doe, whatever. I mean, this is their latest shtick. There's somebody on Twitter pointing out that in Texas, there's an online voter registration form, and at the very end, after you fill it all out, you click submit, and you think that you've registered to vote, right? In fact, what you did is the submit button actually it then says, okay, now here, print this out and sign it and bring it in along with your proof, right, to the Secretary of State's office. And people don't go that far. They don't see that. They think they've registered to vote when they haven't. So if you're in Texas, be very careful. But anyhow, this is what they're doing in Georgia. It's bizarre.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Read all about it at hartmannreport.com. I'll be right back with you, picking up your calls in just a moment. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Common Sense for the 21st Century by Roger Hallam. The subtitle, Only Nonviolent Rebellion Can Now Stop Climate Breakdown and Social Collapse. This is from the foreword. I was there for the past 20 years. Climate activism. It didn't work. We protested in our hundreds of millions. It didn't work. We raised billions to reach people and politicians. It didn't work. We signed countless online petitions. They didn't work. We looked to the United Nations to resolve the crisis. It didn't work. We trusted progressive politicians and their reforms. That didn't work. Al Gore had a big concert and a PR campaign. It didn't work. Countless NGOs, non-governmental organizations, did their best, and it didn't work. I worked with green NGO campaigns, champagne environmentalists, and lying politicians. I was wasting my time. I had a clue back in 2007 that there might be a fundamental flaw with the reformist approach. The problem with the political influence of the industrial billionaires like the Koch brothers and other fossil fuel bosses. It was another warm night in Los Angeles. I was invited to an exclusive event. A Tesla Roadster prototype was going to be shown to press and guests. We took turns riding around the block. I watched in amazement as the Tesla was at the end of the street in the blink of an eye, with barely a sound. I felt like a caveman seeing a television. Incredible. While I was working on a campaign in 2007, I had an idea for how to save the world with a massive music event and a huge fundraising effort led by celebrities to fund the biggest PR campaign to save the environment. It would be a huge global event, just like Live Aid. I sought out a prominent journalist at the Tesla event to tell about my scheme and bask in the glory of his praise. The journalist was Vijay Vithswaram from The Economist, now a life member of this Council on Foreign Relations. After listening carefully to my concept, he smiled and laughed. I was stunned. Laughter? How could I be so wrong? Vijay wasn't being cruel or unkind. He thought I was naive. He said, "The fossil fuel industry has enough money to outspend any public relations campaign you might try by 100 times. He carried on talking, but I had stopped listening. I had my answer. He was right. Crestfallen, I sheepishly nodded and walked away. Over the next 12 years, I watched as fossil fuel companies used their vast financial capital to buy political parties, trick NGOs into fruitless schemes like the U.S. Cap and Trade Initiative, sow doubt about climate science in the public discourse, and slow policy reform to a snail's pace. Their strategy worked. As climate skepticism continued to spread, climate change mitigation dropped down voters' priorities. With Trump and Putin in power, it was over. I quit climate campaigning. Then I heard about Extinction Rebellion closing 5 bridges in London. And they closed central London in April 2019. This was something different. I met Roger Hallam and he explained his ideas for a radical plan to create real change. This included, first, tell the truth. Climate skepticism was pushed by the mainstream media, which spread doubt on climate science like a plague, leaving inaction in its wake. The scale of the crisis is being played down, and we must get the truth out. Second, nonviolent civil disobedience. We need to get arrested, tens of thousands of us, more. No more protests, no more petitions. Instead, nonviolent civil disobedience, lots of it, and on a large scale. Close down cities until the politicians take action, or until the people do. Third, universalism. In other words, the ecological and climate crisis should not be owned by any political ideology, culture, age, or gender. As Roger Hallam says, we all have a stake in the future. We should all be allowed to engage in action. I was convinced. We need a new approach to save ourselves and the planet. We need to spark a worldwide rebellion. We need some common sense for the 21st century. That foreword was written by, quote, anonymous climate activist. So this now is the introduction to the book. It is time to grow up and see the world as it is. There are some things which are undeniably real. There are some things we cannot change, and one of those is the law of physics. Ice melts when the temperature increases. Crops die in a drought. Trees burn in forest fires. Because these things are real, we can also be certain about what the future holds. We are now heading into a period of extreme ecological collapse. Whether or not this leads to the extinction of the human species largely depends on whether revolutionary changes happen within our societies within the next decade. This is not a matter of ideology, but of simple math and physics. The United Nations has estimated that we need to reduce carbon emissions by half within a decade to have a 50% chance of avoiding a global catastrophe. Of course, this is likely to be an underestimate, as recent science shows permafrost melting 90 years earlier than forecasted, and Himalayan glaciers melting twice as fast as expected. The book, Common Sense for the 21st Century, by Roger Hallam, the co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion. The subtitle, Only Nonviolent Rebellion Can Now Stop Climate Breakdown and Social Collapse. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Breaks through, a fresh start anew, another day to seize with a clearer view. No need to worry about what's coming next. Just live in the now, let go of the rest.
Welcome back. So a poll, this is a Gallup poll, this was last month, showed 23% of pro-choice voters and 8% of anti-abortion voters will vote basically based on abortion and nothing else. 32% of voters. The Daily Kos just ran a poll. Joan McCarter's reporting about it over on dailykos.com. And it's from Civics, the CIVIQS, the polling agency. Nearly half of respondents, 48%, said that they would not vote for a major candidate who disagrees with them on abortion. 70% of Democrats said that, 28% of Republicans, 42% of respondents overall, demanding that the candidates ask for their votes for president, senator, governor, House of Representatives agree with them on abortion. Kamala Harris has the support of 58% of women. 36% of women support Trump. 57% of women say they will cast their votes based on abortion. Wow, that's extraordinary news. I'm telling you, it's going to be a blowout this fall. I've been saying this for a year now, and it's, now it's becoming obvious. It was tough to say a month ago, but it's going to be a blowout this fall. All right, what's on your mind? Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's up?
No, hey, Tom. To help keep it a blowout, yesterday Trump put out seniors should not have to pay taxes on Social Security.
Oh, it goes beyond that. He claimed that he would never touch Social Security when, in fact, every single one of the 4 years he was president, his administration submitted a budget that cut Social Security every single year.
Right, I realize that, but this issue for seniors, and you've talked about this. A number of us have called our representatives over the years saying to get rid of the Ronald Reagan tax on Social Security, and it's going to be an issue for seniors. My suggestion would be for the Democratic Party to get ahead of this and put it on the floor and put it to a vote. Make them put their money where their mouth is.
I agree.
There's a Democratic representative from Minnesota. Her name is Craig is her last name, Angie Craig. She has the You Earned It, You Keep It Act. It's House H.R. 7084. Now, her bill would eliminate the tax on Social Security payments. At the same time, it would make Social Security solvent by eliminating the cap. So that's an extra. I don't know if there's a similar bill by anybody in the Senate.
Yeah, John. Oh, I'm sorry. John Larson has one in the House too. But yeah, I don't. Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm just thinking, like you said. I guess I just go back to in 2016 when we all thought that Clinton was a liar. I realize this is a lot different now. But I'm just thinking, I don't want to give them any ammo at all. So I was thinking if the Democratic Party could jump on this, much as they did with the border bill, put it to a vote and say, hey, let's fix this and
I agree
and make it happen.
I agree. This is a Republican tax. It was Ronald Reagan who did this in 1986, who put a tax on your Social Security income. And by the way, your Social Security, you pay into Social Security through a tax. So this should be post-tax dollars. These should not be double taxed. We're suffering from double taxation. Those of us on Social Security, and it's wrong.
Yeah, I'm just thinking this would be for the Democratic Party, at least if they could get a vote in the Senate and the House on this before November.
Absolutely right.
I think that would be great for the party.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Ed, thank you very much. Scott in Oakland, California. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I listen to political talk all day long, 5, 6 different programs, yours include, obviously. But I hear a lot of good framing stuff come up, and I've started writing them down. Well, I've been writing them down for years, but I usually don't do much with them. But in this case, I thought it was important. Yesterday, Hal Sparks brought this up. I caught this on Hal Sparks' show where one of the frames that he saw with the black jobs is that black people don't have careers. They have jobs, right?
Oh, interesting. So that's arguably what Trump was suggesting. Yeah.
That's what he's saying. That's how his mind works. Black people don't have careers, they have jobs.
Right.
And that's Hal Sparks. I'm giving Hal Sparks full credit for that.
Yeah.
And then today, Frangela.
Scott, I just lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now, yeah. Keep going.
Oh, sorry, I moved. Anyway, so on Steph's show this morning, Francis, I think it was, or Angela said, that pulling Trump out 30 minutes in yesterday proves his team doesn't trust him. So there's a trust. I don't want them to pull him out. I don't want him to leave.
Yeah, he was supposed to be. He had said he'd be there for an hour. He was there for 35 minutes.
But I don't want him off the Republican ticket. I want him, the man, standing there.
Oh, he's the easiest Republican to beat this year. There's no doubt about that.
But I would imagine they somehow force him out. He would even his craziness. He could even go third party.
Yeah. Yeah, he would.
Those were.
There's no doubt in my mind he would. And then he'd claim that it was stolen and quack, quack, quack. So.
Right. Those were two good framing points. Hey, one other point about the Butler shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things they need to really focus on is where was the gun. I haven't heard anybody talk about that.
Yeah.
Because they said he had a backpack, but again, you run into the same problem with the Oswald and the.
Well, he was carrying the gun apparently openly because it's an open carry state.
He was carrying a gun on the grounds where the president of the United States is. I don't believe it because there was video from earlier where he wasn't. He was walking around the building. Eventually.
Oh, so the gun was hidden in the backpack or was pre-positioned or something?
It has to have been pre-positioned.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know,
anyway,
Scott. I'm no scholar of that. But what I have noticed is that Trump's ear has miraculously healed. Scott, thanks for the call. Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, Norma, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom.
Hey.
This thing about racism, that most people don't understand how racist white people are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you, I know because I live with them.
Yeah.
And they think that if you're not white, you're nasty, you're dirty, you're crook and diseased, and you're horrible. And when I watch these videos, particularly with his Heritage Foundation president, his last name's Ford, he's talking about mass deportations with that smug smile on his face. I don't think that they mean just Hispanics. They want a white Christian nation, and how are they going to get it? And I have been warning black people that they need to make sure everybody's registered to vote, keep checking, so they don't, because they're saying if you haven't registered here, if you haven't voted in the last election here in Alabama, they are removing you from the voter rolls.
Right.
And some people don't vote in the midterms.
Most people don't vote. Many people don't vote in the midterms. Yeah, you're right. Actually, probably a majority don't vote because you get a voter participation rate below 50%. So, in fact, most people don't vote in midterms.
Yes, and so, but when Trump was talking about these illegal immigrants taking black jobs, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream at the TV, because to me, we have black EMTs, firemen, police officers, sheriffs, city councilmen, a black mayor. We have black representatives in the House, and we have black professors with doctorates in these colleges, and teachers and nurses and doctors. We have doctors from every country in the world here because of the University of Alabama and Birmingham Hospital is a training hospital.
Yeah.
We have people from all over the world here, and we have a Hyundai plant, and so we have Koreans of every kind. Japan bought a historic building downtown. It was one of the first skyscrapers back then, 100 years ago. And so do they intend to round up everybody who's not white, and what are they going to do with them, Tom?
Well, it's an interesting question. There's two things you just raised, Norma, that I'd like to speak to. One is that question. I mean, black people should make sure that they have their proof of citizenship, proof of birth in the United States as well, because if Trump becomes president and starts going door to door, rounding up people who he thinks are, should be deported to south of the border, he ain't going to go after any white people, but, like you said, people of color right across the board. But I think that when Trump was talking about black jobs yesterday at the Black Journalist Convention, that really the subtext of what he's saying is that, black people have been the underdogs essentially economically in the United States for 400, 500 years. And what he was trying to assert was that, poor Mexicans are coming in and replacing the jobs of poor African Americans. And what that suggests is that that's just fine with Trump, that racial hierarchy that has been here for all these years is like normal, that's acceptable. He should be condemning that rather than, trying to exploit it. Yes?
Yeah. Well, Tom, let me tell one thing. I've had 2 white men tell me that Trump is going to get rid of these illegals that have Social Security cards and SNAP cards and live in federal housing. 2 of them. I looked at them. I said, how do you think an illegal is going to walk into a federal building and get a Social Security card from a federal employee who is not going to commit a federal felony? And do you think these illegals who are under the radar of everybody are going to go say, hey, give me this?
Right.
They could be arrested and deported. Do you really think this is happening, that illegals are living off of Social Security and federal housing? How dumb are you?
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I'm living with every day. These people think that if you're white, you're okay. Well, I'm part of the neighborhood watch. I watch white people, too, when they go by.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
I don't stand there and stare at a black man jogging by. I'm watching the white ones because they're the ones who break into your house.
Yeah, more often than not, yeah. Norma, thank you. Thank you very much. It's always so nice to hear from you. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
President Biden is speaking on this historic prisoner swap. This is the largest prisoner swap with the Russians since Russia was the Soviet Union. And welcome back. Sean in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today? Sean, you are on the air.
Tom, I'm sorry. I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on, Frank. Tom, can you hear me?
I'm having a hard time, Sean. Can you get your mouth closer to the microphone or just use your phone like a normal phone, please?
Okay, I'm sorry. Forgot I had the speaker on. Tom, I want to thank you for bringing up that stubborn Fed chair, Jerome Powell.
Mm-hmm.
I've been bringing his name up for months and nobody's biting on it.
Yeah.
But he specifically promised 3 interest rates reductions for this year. Here we are in the
he didn't promise. He suggested it was a possibility, quite some time ago.
And thanks for correcting me, but I don't think people realize how much that affects the cost of living. I wouldn't have been able to get my home.
Yeah.
Without the low interest rate. And no one's on his back about it. You're the only one I've heard bring it up.
Yeah, mortgage rates are up, credit card rates are up, car loan rates are up. If you use credit, which is the majority of Americans, Jerome Powell is making it more expensive for you to live. You're absolutely right, and I agree with Senator Warren that she put out a notice or a statement yesterday saying that this is doing more harm than good. It's reached the point now where it's starting to do more harm than good, and I think she's absolutely.
I'm glad someone's starting to finally bring it up. Can I add one more thing, Tom? Early in Trump's administration, he put Senator Mike Lee in charge of a voter integrity unit or office, and his sole purpose was to go to, I believe he had to go to every Secretary of State and ask for everyone's Social Security number. And with that number would come your gender, of course your race, of course your party affiliation, but also your criminal record and military record.
Right.
Now you can imagine the ones that agreed to do it, and of course you all know the Democratic Secretary of State just told them to jump in the river. But there's no doubt in my mind that with that data, you have governors that have used laws to specifically target. They know which laws would affect most Democrat voters.
It could be. I mean, Mike Lee is a federal official. He didn't need to go to the states to get that. He could just get it from the Social Security Administration, I suppose, although I think it's supposed to be confidential. But, point made, Sean. Thank you very much. Claudine in Mexico. Hey, Claudine, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Fine. What's on your mind?
Okay. 2001, I went through a grueling 5-month treatment for cancer, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. And the first surgery, there was a program in the hospital where you would listen to a Walkman and they would give you these reassuring messages. The surgery's going to go well, you're going to heal quickly, etc. So after the surgery, I'm trying to wake up from the anesthesia, and I'm listening to the Walkman, and who's on the Walkman? Bob Grant.
Okay.
Who I hate and despise. But what happened was during the surgery, one of the doctors was trying to, work with the Walkman. So I had to listen to Bob Grant for a half an hour while coming out of anesthesia.
You're talking about the Florida senator? The late Florida senator?
No, that horrible right-wing radio.
Oh, the radio preacher.
Talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I get it. Claudine, I'm sorry to hear that. What a story. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. We'll be right back. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it.
In the heartland where the rivers run, where the dreams of freedom first begun, they speak of flags and promised lands, but their vision slips through our hands. J.D. Vance and MAGA crew claim they know what's best for you, but their America's not what we see. Not the land of the brave, not the home of the free. They don't represent our core, not the values we adore. Liberty and justice for all, not just for the few who stand.
51 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Matt in Rockville, Maryland. Hey, Matt. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's up?
Hey, how you doing? Just to push back on a couple of recent quick callers. For starters, Jerome Powell doesn't set the interest rate. The FOMC, which is a committee, does. That's
Sure.
for starters.
Yeah, but he has considerable influence over the Federal Open Market Committee. And you know
sure,
that,
influence
Matt.
and vote. He has a single vote, as do the other people.
Sure.
Second, saying the woman from Alabama who talked about not getting federal aid is going to the cities and states, and the cities and states are paying that out. So let's not act like taking money from pocket one and putting it in pocket two, then giving it out, isn't coming from pocket one. That's just an idiotic statement. But why I wanted to call,
makes
you
no
said
sense.
that the Republicans were... Yeah, I agree, and I don't understand why she said it.
No,
so,
what you're saying makes no sense. Yes, so what?
You said that.
Yeah, federal aid is often block granted to states, or in the case of Medicaid, flows directly to the states. So what?
Okay. So you said that Republicans were concerned with identity politics. NPR 2020. Pressure grows on Joe Biden to pick a black woman as his running mate. Yeah. Politico 2021. Newsom says he'll name a black woman to Senate if Feinstein resigns.
Yeah, Democrats are saying, hey, we're going to make up for years and years and years of racial discrimination, and we're going to elevate some people who Republicans would not even consider. I'm astonished, frankly, Matt,
Clarence Thomas? What about Clarence Thomas?
Yeah, Clarence Thomas.
What about, hold on,
ask some black people about Clarence Thomas. Man, I'm astonished that J.D. Vance even made the cut, given that he's got an Indian wife. I'm willing to bet that Donald Trump had no idea. Matt, good try. Thanks a lot. Kevin in Durham, North Carolina. Hey, Kevin, what's on your mind today?
Oh, boy, I wish I could follow up that guy, but the reason why I called
he's doing his best.
Well, the reason why I called is because I remember, I think it was last week, when it became clear that Kamala Harris was going to take over for Joe Biden, that Mike Johnson was telling Republicans, please don't resort to racist and sexist attacks against Harris.
Right.
Which, number one, when you have to tell Republicans, please don't be racist and sexist, I mean, that's noteworthy in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not surprising that this is happening because, like you said, I mean, this is what they're all about. They're obsessed with race.
Yeah.
And it's always about black people. You asked about J.D. Vance's kids. They don't look at it like that. This only applies to people like me, black people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is nothing new. I just want to remind folks that this country has tried to define who's black and who isn't for centuries, going back to the one-drop rule.
Yeah,
I mean, you're a historian, you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I hope they keep going down this road, to be honest with you, because it's not going to play well for them.
Yeah, I think what's happening is more and more Americans are saying, if Democrats want to help people of color get a leg up, that's okay. But if Republicans want to continue trying to keep them down and continue to trash talk, people of color, we're not buying it anymore. And I get it. Thank you very much, Kevin. Well said. Thank you. Sandra in Boston. Hey, Sandra, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I just wanted to say, yesterday somebody called in to give you some shade about Kamala Harris, and I was hoping that in the future you take them on a bit, because your viewers and listeners rely on you to know how to respond to these types of critiques. And I just wanted to remind them that Kamala's not like some Joe Arpaio type who defies the courts to pursue his own, racist agenda. As a prosecutor, she was tough on crime, which is what the American public wants, and will serve her well against the Republicans. And true progressives often go down in flames, like Chesa Bowden, the former San Francisco DA. And when Kamala was a prosecutor, at the time, mass incarceration was mainstream, and we weren't talking about the impact and the new Jim Crow. As someone who worked in law enforcement during that time, prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, Americans, particularly white Americans, weren't ready to hear about progressive police reform, and many still aren't. But she's got a great record on other progressive issues, including the environment, LGBTQ rights, marrying the first gay couple in California, and just fighting for average Americans against predatory businesses. But right now, when we're up against the new right, nothing could be more progressive than electing a woman of color as president. And I love what her mom told her, you may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last.
Yeah.
And lastly, did you catch the On Point episode on the new right on NPR?
I did not.
If there's somewhere I can send it to you, this thing is scary, what they're talking about. Peter.
I'll make a note. We're going to hit a break here in about 20 seconds, and I'll make a note and go looking for it.
On Point right. I'm telling you, it'll send chills down your spine, Tom. Please listen to it. Okay. Excellent. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sandra, and thanks for recapping. the good things that Kamala Harris has done. I had forgotten that she had married the first gay couple in California as attorney general, as state attorney general, as I recall. That she's got a great record. She does, and she's going to make a great president. I'm really looking forward to this. Next year. We all get to breathe a sigh of relief. The crazy it'll still be with us, of course, but not with the kind of power it has right now. And they're getting it. And like I said, Putin has figured this out. Trump came out a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago and said, they're never going to release Gerskovich and Paul Whelan. They'll never do it. Putin will do that when I become president. No, Putin knows who's president.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back!
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Minority Leader, How to Lead from the Outside and Make Real Change by Stacey Abrams. This is from chapter 1, although the introduction is fascinating too, where she talks about, Rhodes scholarships and stuff, but this is chapter 1. I sit in the living room, a cozy space, warm in the early summer. I'm perched on the edge of a sofa next to Valerie, the home's owner, a lovely black woman in her late 40s. Across from us, seated close together on a wide settee met for one, are her 2 children, a son and a daughter. Politicians rarely visit their streets, which are nestled in a poorer community in South Georgia. Valerie beams with pride that both her children are headed to college in the fall. David, 17, plans to study criminology. Maya, 18, her belly round with her first child, intends to become a middle school teacher. Both newly graduated from high school, Maya will give birth in mere weeks and begin college months later, an unwed teen mother. Her intended school is more than 3 hours north of her home, so her mother will raise her newborn baby while she starts her freshman year. Valerie speaks matter-of-factly about the coming challenge, raising a new child just as hers leaves the nest. Still, she is determined that both her children pursue college degrees that she never received. Maya, the mother-to-be, wonders how she'll do so far away from home and her baby. Yet in the next breath, she explains how college will be the best for her and her child. Their future success rests upon her. I've come to their home as part of my campaign for governor, so I asked Valerie what she expects of someone like me. What can I do to help make lives like hers better? In her soft voice, she replies, she just wants options for financial aid for her children. They will succeed, she says, if they can afford to stay in school. As I look around the modest home passed down through the generations, I understand both the pride and the desperation tangled in her response. She got them through and has given them the tools to carve out better lives for themselves. We chat more about the worries she's lived with all those years, our discussion turning to the crime and poverty in their neighborhood. Then I ask Valerie what she wants. At first, all I get in response is a quizzical look to suggest I need to reconsider my bid for higher office. Or that suggests. I repeat, what do you want for you? What secret dream do you have for yourself? Her confused expression turns to one of surprise. I don't know, she tells me. I've been a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly for 20 years. You must want something, I probe, something you'd like to do for you? A daycare, she admits quietly. I'd like to start a daycare center for unwed mothers like my daughter, so more girls can finish school and pursue their dreams. But that ambition is beyond her. Her body language, her tone of voice, her averted gaze speak louder than her words. I press her, but she demurs with a smile. Let's just see what happens if you win the governor's job, she says. Valerie's house in South Georgia is not too different from the squat red brick house where I grew up on South Street in Gulfport, Mississippi. An oak tree grew out in our front yard, shadowing the front sidewalk, forbidding grass to grow beneath its shade. Pink azaleas bloomed each spring from bushes that flanked the front door. Our rented house and the others set close by teemed with children, all black, all working class. We played in our postage-stamped yards, make believing the fantastical, superhero exploits, cops and robbers. As we got older, we'd talk about moving to New Orleans or living in one of the mansions along the beachfront that lay less than 5 miles away, across the railroad tracks that ran in between our neighborhood and the more wealthy environs. We dreamed of more, while our parents' lives centered around survival and making it from paycheck to paycheck. Instinctively, we understood that more had to be possible, even if we didn't know what to do to get there. These imaginings, these desires, are the roots of ambition. As adults, like Valerie, we tend to edit our desires until they fit our construction of who we're supposed to become. In such a world, I wouldn't dare dream of running for higher office, for mayor or governor or president. At least for now, Valerie sees herself retiring in 20 more years from Piggly Wiggly as a cashier, rather than as a small business owner who helps the community raise its children. From our brief meeting, I could see she had the fire, albeit of a low burn, of a minority leader. She had ambition, she had vision, but she didn't have the faith, and understandably so. Whether we come from working class neighborhoods or grow up comfortably middle class, minorities rarely come of age explicitly thinking about what we want and how to get it. People already in power almost never have to think about whether they belong in the room, much less if they would be listened to once outside. These men, and they are usually men and typically white, do not have to grapple with low expectations based on gender or race or class. Ambition for them begins with reminiscences of old times and older friendships or newer alliances. The ends have already been decided. Only the means are to be discussed. Most potential minority leaders feel the same lack of faith Valerie had, at least at some point in their evolution. We may not know how to get the first job, let alone make it to the big chair. We don't know how to take the leap from accepting our fates to actually changing them, and not just a little, but radically. Then there are those who simply don't know what they want. The drive to achieve burns inside, often without a clear target. We want to be something, but what that is remains hazy. Often we cannot articulate our goals because they lie just beyond the reach of who we're supposed to be. Ambition's scale is irrelevant. What holds us back is not scope, it's fear. And because we don't know what to call our dreams, don't know how to make them happen, or are pretty sure we'll be disappointed, we just stand still. We become a minority, but becoming a minority leader demands that we embrace ambition as our due. Stacey Abrams.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Second hour of our program. So Biden just had a press conference and, about the prisoners swap. And a reporter said, Trump said he could have gotten the hostages out without getting anything in exchange. What do you say to that? And Biden looks at him and says, why didn't he do that when he was president? Yeah, Paul Whelan was taken while Trump was president. Anyhow, on the line with us is our longtime buddy. I don't want to call you old Phil here. Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent in Kyiv, Ukraine, and host of the On the Edge podcast. He also has a video blog over on YouTube. Just plug in Philip Ittner. Ittner Philip is his Twitter handle. Phil, welcome back to the program. I'm seeing reports that the F-16s are in the air. What's going on there?
The F-16s are in the air. They may have been used in a recent massive attack that happened 2 nights ago here in Kiev. They are believed to have assisted in the air defense program. There are those who are concerned, however, that it might have been a ploy by the Russians to kind of draw out the F-16s so that they could see their capacity and perhaps even track where they fly in and out of. So glad to have them in the air. A couple of photographs have been taken, videos have been taken, so they are definitely here. But how the Ukrainians will use them, I'm not 100% sure yet, because I've got a lot of conflicting reports coming in, whether or not they're going to try to use them in an offensive capability on the front lines, which could put them at risk, and obviously losing them and their pilot would be devastating. Or would they be more held back in reserve in a defensive capability to try and keep Russian forces from advancing or conducting attacks on the cities or various positions and logistic hubs, arsenals, ammo depots, what have you. So we'll see how they get used, but they're here.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of attacks on the cities, last week when we talked, you said Kyiv was down to a couple of hours a day of electricity. How is the situation now?
I think it may have been the darkest before the dawn kind of situation. I think they were last week. I went the longest period of a lack of electricity that I've been through since coming here, since the full-scale invasion. It may have been that they were transitioning to. There's a whole new system that has been implemented here in Kiev to try and give alternative methods for electricity, or to keep the electricity flowing until, say, a transformer can be repaired or what have you. So it may be that we, for now, are in a better place than we were last week, and it may have been kind of our darkest moment. But hopefully we will have consistent electricity, because not to tempt fate, but I have gone now 2 full days without an electricity gap, at least while I was awake.
Really? So you've got continuous electricity now. That's marvelous.
Yeah, we now have, it is. Something's been done.
Yeah, I guess so.
They've changed something, and it may have been that bad period last week was because they were bringing this new system online. But as I say, knock wood, we'll have a more reliable electrical supply, because we certainly need it.
That's great to hear. I read that Ukraine had struck a Russian airbase in Syria. How far outside the boundaries of Ukraine are the Ukrainian forces reaching right now?
Well, we know they were in Mali. Well,
in Africa.
Sorry, let me correct myself. Yes, there was another big story here. Aside from that strike that you're referring to, there was a bunch of Tuareg rebels in Mali who took out a whole bunch of Russian Wagner group, this paramilitary group that is thinly veiled Russian militia or a paramilitary group. And the Tuareg rebels in Mali were able to overwhelm them. And then when they took a picture of all these Wagner soldiers that they had taken custody of and prisoner of, they were taking it with a Ukrainian flag, and there was a masked individual of clearly European, Caucasian European, standing next to the rebels. And the thinking is that it might have been Ukrainian military intelligence, GUR, who might have been down there, because they were openly showing the Ukrainian flag. So Ukraine is going to seek out Russian assets no matter where they are globally. And we are we've seen a few incidents, but these couple of incidents on quick heels with one another is pretty clear messaging that Ukraine will take it to the Russians wherever they find them.
Which raises the question: how is the war going? What's happening on the front lines?
Well, I wish I had better news to report on that front, but the Ukrainians are falling back from an onslaught of Russian assets, Russian forces out in Donbass. It's not a huge stretch of territory, and I don't, it looks like what they're doing is trying to solidify their control over Donbass, but that isn't going to change the course of the war, because unless the Russians can take a major city like Kharkiv, or more importantly, even Odessa, that at the end of this war, presuming that there is a Ukraine, which I have no doubt there will be, major things would have to go horribly wrong for there not to be a nation state called Ukraine that will include Odessa. And that, just by surviving, will be a form of victory, because it will also call into question Russia's dominance over the Black Sea. If they can hold on to the seaport in Odessa, Ukraine can cause all kinds of havoc to the Black Sea fleet, which has already been forced to move away from its traditional port in Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula, all the way out to the farthermost eastern shore of the Black Sea. And losing the Black Sea is, in so many ways, what this war is all about.
Yeah, I get it. Why they took Crimea in the first place, for the
That's
Russians.
Right.
What are you reporting this week in your On the Edge podcast? What's the top of your news, Phil?
Well, firstly, let me address one quick thing, if I could, Tom. With this announcement, it's quite timely. The announcement of President Biden's major success in getting these prisoners out from Russia, because our last week's episode, if you missed it, was with a former British POW in a Russian proxy prison here in Donbass, and he described to us what it's like to be in one of these prisons, and it's horrific. The stories he tells. Now, I've been in Russian prisons before as a journalist, but I got to leave. He was actually imprisoned in one, and the tales that he tells are horrific. And it is, no matter what you think about the terms of the release or whatever else, today, Evan Gershkovich, Paul Whelan, Vladimir Karamuza, also what is her surname, Karamusova, they are no longer in these horrific conditions. So go watch that episode if you want to understand the significance of releasing these Americans and green card holder in the case of Karamuza, because they're horrible, awful, despicable places. Our next week's episode is going to be with a journalist here, an American journalist, Zarina Zabriskie. It is a very difficult story as well, because we are more or less breaking the tale of what Russians are doing in the riverside town of Kherson in southern Ukraine, where they are actually hunting human beings. The Russians are hunting Ukrainian civilians, human beings, with drones, and it's a war crime.
Wow. To kill them, presumably.
To kill them, or just to torture them and to create terror. Right. They will chase civilians down the street. They will cut into apartment buildings or little alleyways. The drones, controlled by a Russian drone controller somewhere remotely, follows them down these alleyways and streets, terrorizing them. Think about that time you're living in your hometown and there are drones that are pursuing you, hunting you. They call it a human safari in Kherson. Whoa. They feel that they are actually prey to the Russian drone operators, who don't care whether they hit a military target or a civilian one, because they clearly must know what they're targeting, because they follow these civilians as they run away from the drones down the street. It is, as I say, a war crime.
Incredible.
So I urge you to watch this Sunday's episode. It is disturbing, but we need to know why it is we need to stand by the Ukrainians, and what Russia is doing is terrorism.
In these occupied territories, are the Russian troops still kidnapping young Ukrainian children and shipping them back to Russia for the child porn industry?
Yeah, well, the child porn industry is an allegation. I think it's a substantial one and a reputable one. But yes, they are still taking Ukrainian children from areas that they advance into. All the more reason why the Ukrainians are determined to take back the territory that they are, yes, admittedly losing right now. But to leave Ukrainians at the hands of Russian, and especially Ukrainian children in those occupied territories, is unacceptable to Kiev, despite the desperate need for a peace.
They've already taken over 100,000 of these children. This is just shocking. Phil Ittner, veteran war correspondent in Kyiv, Ukraine, and host of the On the Edge podcast, available where fine podcasts are found. Phil, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thank you, Tom.
Always good talking with you. Always enlightening. It's 16 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. I got to tell you actually about Josh Shapiro, a big article about him in the New York Magazine today. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And welcome back. And let's see here, Nathan in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Hey, Nathan, what's on your mind today? Oh, Nathan just hung up, apparently. Let's try Sean in Alexandria, Virginia. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today?
Yes, sir. I had a thought and like to know your opinion. The timing of Citizens United was basically right when Obama was raising crazy money from individual contributions, and I wonder if it was fear of people having more power than billionaires because of the ability of it didn't exist, before Obama's.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this was the billionaires were pouring money down Clarence Thomas's throat. And this was 2 years before before Obama would stand for re-election. I think that's a very credible, you could call it a conspiracy theory, but I would just call it a credible assumption.
Well, the first, it was 2008 when it first went to court. Right. Before, it had to work its way to the Supreme Court. So the timing is when Obama was running, against Hillary.
When the Supreme Court decided to take the case, though, it was 2009. That's when they granted cert.
Yeah.
And Obama was president.
But right. But the timing of it all just seems to me like it was like, oh, gosh, we've got a problem, and that was their solution.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption, Sean.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Good talking to you, Michael in Los Angeles. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I am concerned that even if Kamala wins in a blowout election, that some states are not going to certify the electoral votes, and therefore it's going to be thrown to the House of Representatives to determine who wins the presidency.
Right.
Now, I've read a little bit about the Electoral Reform Act, and it seems to me that that strategy might not work because it's going to be a majority of those states that actually cast electoral votes. So, you know, someone could be elected president with, say, 250 electoral votes. They don't need the 270. Is that a correct reading of the Electoral Reform Act? And do I need to worry about this?
If it is, I'm unfamiliar with it, Michael, but I have not read the Electoral Vote Reform Act or Electoral Count Act, I think is what it's called. So that's a really good question. I don't know the answer. Did you read the law?
I
Can you quote me a sentence or two?
Piece about it, not the law. I read an article about it that seemed pretty informed, and its point was that it's a plurality of electoral votes, not necessarily the 270.
I believe the Constitution says a majority. I mean, how do you get around the Constitution with a law? You have to amend the Constitution to get around that. Now, I might be wrong on that too. I'd have to go back and reread the Constitution.
So the electoral, one of the things that it did was that it defined the vice president's role as ceremonial only.
Yeah, I get that.
So you can't pull a Mike Pence, right?
Right.
So anyways, yeah, because I'm really concerned about that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's their strategy.
We need to get one of these election lawyers on the program to clarify this stuff. Sean is on it. Michael, thank you. Thanks for raising that question.
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate it. 21 minutes past the hour. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
Hey, Republicans, can you hear the cries of newborns lost under your skies? You promised change, but at what cost? Now we count the lives you've lost. In red states, the bans took hold. Doctors scared, their hands so cold. Women suffered, barely survived, while your policies, they thrived. Hey, Republicans, where have all the babies gone? In your war on women, something's gone so wrong. From Roe v. Wade.
22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So, New York Magazine just published a fascinating piece by Jonathan Chait. It's titled, "What's So Great About Josh Shapiro?" And he notes right up front that there are two hits on Josh Shapiro. The first is that he endorsed a school voucher plan. And the second is his association with Israel and his concern, his calling for the firing of the university president. Who testified before Congress about the student protests. With regard to the school voucher program, Jonathan Chait notes that they actually never negotiated. They didn't successfully put this thing into law. And part of the reason was that he could not get Republicans to yield on some of the more onerous parts of it. So he writes, Shapiro wound up not implementing a voucher plan when he was unable to come to terms with Republicans. He's also been endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers, which probably alleviates some of the concern. On the Israel issue, Jonathan Chait notes, the more serious criticism centers on his comments on anti-Israel protests since October 7th, which he has denounced. In the broadest terms, he defends the right to free speech while condemning anti-Semitism. On the Middle East itself, Chait writes, his position is also conventionally democratic. He supports the two-state solution. He endorses Israel's right to self-defense against Hamas terrorism, and he condemns Benjamin Netanyahu as a dangerous and destructive leader. Now, that third part I was unfamiliar with, and I'm really glad to hear that. By the way, Shapiro ran 14 points ahead of Joe Biden in his state, and right now he's 29 points ahead in his approval rating is up 29 points. This guy is doing really well in Pennsylvania. He's made public school breakfast universally available. He opened up state jobs that previously required a college degree to applicants without one. He delivered a masterful performance repairing a melted bridge on I-95 in Philadelphia, delivering practical results that voters can notice. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens and who is Kamala Harris's nominee. But we've got a great group of potential vice presidential nominees. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I'd like to address the question the caller asked during what most people heard as a break, maybe didn't hear about the electoral vote count.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution says that the president shall be the one who wins the majority of electors appointed. So, in other words, however many electors are appointed, this idea that...
Oh, I see. So if some states don't certify, then the total number of electors needed goes down.
Yeah, because all the states since 1880 have directed their legislatures to choose electors by a popular vote of the people in the state.
Right.
So, for instance, in Florida in 2000, had they failed to certify, which is why the Supreme Court was so dead set on making them certify by December 18th, then those 29 votes would not have been, 29 electoral votes would not have been appointed. Therefore, the majority would have been Al Gore at 267 and George W. Bush at 242.
Thank you for clarifying that, Paul. Thank you so much.
If you have to have it, if there are many candidates, you can't just win a plurality of electoral votes. You have to win 50% plus one.
Yeah, that was my clear recollection from having read the Constitution, but it didn't occur to me that the magic word is appointed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so okay. So what I wanted to call about is that, and this is, I'll tie this to something else in the Constitution. Is I heard,
I just have 10 seconds, Paul, if you want to get right to it.
Okay. See if you can. Here's another one. See if you can find in the Constitution before the 14th Amendment, in the original part of the Constitution, what are the criteria for becoming a citizen, for being a citizen of the United States or any state?
Are there any?
Find nothing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There is no criteria. Yeah. Okay. Paul, thank you very much. Good talking to you, as always. It's 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Talk Media for the sane among us. I'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us. Our book in today's Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Harvey J. Kaye, Professor Harvey Kaye. Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again. This is from the introduction. On December 1st, 1862, in the midst of the Civil War, just weeks before he was to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his annual message to Congress. Lincoln firmly believed that the United States had an historic responsibility to demonstrate to the world that people can govern themselves, make equal rights not just a self-evident truth, but a manifest one, and create a political and economic order in which working people, both white and black, are not compelled to bow to anyone, neither aristocrats nor capitalists. Empowered by tens of thousands of black slaves who were already liberating themselves from bondage by escaping to the Union lines, and increasingly confident that the majority of his fellow Americans would recognize the truth of what he was saying, Lincoln closed his address by calling on them to see that the time had come to remember who they were and what they demanded, or what that demanded. He told them that to save the nation and all that it represented, they must live up to the nation's declared revolutionary purpose and promise, and act to radically enhance American freedom by bringing an end to slavery. This is a quote from Lincoln's address. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We say we are for the Union. The world will not forget that we say this. We know how to save the Union. The world knows we do know how to save it. We, even we here, hold the power and bear the responsibility. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. We too, end of quote from Lincoln. Back to Harvey. We too cannot escape history. Our own struggle to save the nation and the promise it proclaims has begun. Finally, after more than 40 years of fear-driven class war and culture war campaigns against the democratic achievements of generations, the hard-won rights of workers, women and people of color, and the very memory of how they were secured, and now both in the wake of the election debacle of 2016, which gave the presidency to the corrupt, mendacious, racist, sexist, and treacherous demagogue Donald Trump, and continued control of Congress to the formerly conservative but increasingly reactionary Republican Party, and in the face of intensified class and culture war campaigns, we the people have come not only to recognize that American democratic life is in jeopardy, but also to mobilize in hopes of saving it. Millions of us have rallied to the resistance and expressed our democratic fears and desires in action. In the historic Women's March and March for Our Lives of young people, the protests, demonstrations, and legal actions to defend the lives and rights of immigrants and refugees, the Me Too movement to combat sexual assault and harassment, the massive teachers' strikes for higher pay and better funding of public schools in states red and blue, and the enthusiastic canvassing and campaigning for a blue wave to win back Congress in the 2018 midterm elections. But resistance is not enough. The time has come for us to remember who we are and what that demands. The time has come for us to embrace our radical history, the history of how a generation of Americans, high and low, and in all their diversity, not only turned their colonial rebellion into a war for independence, but also imbued American life, whether they all intended it or not, with radical imperative and impulse by declaring a revolutionary promise of freedom, equality, and democracy for all. The history of how generations of radicals and reformers served as the prophetic memory of that promise, and how generations of ordinary men and women, native-born and immigrant, struggled to make real the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to expand not only the we in We the People, but also the powers of the people. And most especially in view of the crises we ourselves face, the history of how our greatest generations confronted and prevailed over the forces that threatened to destroy the nation and bury its revolutionary promise in the 1770s, 1860s, and 1930s and 1940s, not to mention the 1960s, by acting to make the United States, both inspired by Washington, Lincoln, and FDR, and pushing them to go farther than they might otherwise have gone, radically freer, more equal, and more democratic than ever before. The time has come to take hold of that history and make America radical again. I've titled this collection of my speeches and essays, Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again, for reasons that will become obvious, and yet I cannot help but confess that if I had had to title it otherwise, I would have been sorely tempted to use, with full attribution, the title Max Lerner gave to his 1938 work, It Is Later Than You Think, The Need for a Militant Democracy. While it may not seem so, the crisis we face is no less demanding of action, urgent action, than that which confronted his generation. The book Take Hold of Our History by Harvey J. Kaye. Check it out. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government and military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Of the free, where the people stand tall. We've seen Trump rise and fall, and we've heard the call. With unity and hope, we can make a stand. Together side by side, we can heal this land. We've got the power in our hands, the strength of
Welcome back, 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Susan in Chicago Heights, Illinois. Hey, Susan, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call, and thanks for all you do. And tying in with what you were just talking about, there's a new documentary out. It's called God and Country. I think I told your intake worker I was mistaken on the title of it. But it is called God and Country. It's about an hour and a half long. It's on Peacock, maybe elsewhere. And it's all about the Christian nationalists taking over U.S. politics. It's tied to January 6th and Project 2025, and it's chilling and eye-opening. Please check it out.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Thanks for the heads up on that. That sounds fascinating. Appreciate the call. Stanley in Manteca, Stockton, California. What is it, Stanley?
Actually, I'm in Fresno now.
Okay. I'll change that. So what's up,
Tom,
Stanley?
My thought was, back when you were talking about the voter polls are being purged, with the Democrats that are running ads, they need to include information on how voters in their district can make sure they're registered.
Right. Go to vote.org, by the way, to do that for most states. It's real easy.
And I thought maybe the DNC would add a little extra money, because, what good is the ad for that office if he's not going to get the votes because they've been purged?
Yeah, good point. Good point. And that's, Ohio just purged over 100,000 people from their voting rolls just apparently last week, from what I'm reading online. This is the new Republican thing. Oh, we've got to keep the lists clean. Yeah, right. Stanley, thank you.
That's where we need to make sure that, if you've been removed, you know about it and you re-register and basically go around what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it's crazy that you have to register to vote in the first place. I believe it's North Dakota doesn't even have voter registration. You just show up and vote. It makes sense to me. Anyhow, Stanley, thank you for the call. Sandra in Omaha, Nebraska. Hey, Sandra, what's on your mind?
Well, yesterday I had a survey call, which was my first in 60-some years of voting. So I went along with it, and the questions were a bit slanted. Didn't start out that way. It was, what are your feelings about this candidate? Good, bad, indifferent. What are your opinions about that candidate? Da-da-da-da-da. And then they got specific about the current senator that's running for office right now in Nebraska. I won't name him, but they would say things like, candidate X has done so much and brought so much benefit to the military airport and to the roads and all these other things. What's your opinion about this?
So this is not a poll, Sandra. This is called a push poll.
Yeah.
And this is where they're just pretending to run a poll in order to feed you information or misinformation, as the case may be.
Well, then they asked about the Democratic candidate that's running, and and what do you think about his efforts to get 100,000 more illegal immigrants in here who are killing our citizens? And I thought, hang on, just A, that's your opinion. That is not fact. And B, he's not in office.
Yeah. So
you might want to think about how you phrase your questions and try to be a little less slanted. And of course, in Omaha, we have that split district issue. Well, the Republicans are going to fix that this time too. They're going to say, okay, we're working on making sure that even if they disagree with how Nebraska votes as a state, we're going to make sure that that is overturned and corrected to be Republican. So it doesn't matter what District 2 does, and we're going to actually make a law about it now. We're going to make sure it's a law so that you can't.
Yeah.
And so
Remarkable.
I made a comment to the local paper about how, gee, our Husker football team, you've got a new way of winning now. You just got all the refs to agree that before you even get out on the field, you've won.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything happens on the field, you make sure all the decisions are in your favor.
There you go.
And that will work because it works for Republicans all the time. Right?
Good one. Good one. Sandra, thank you. Thanks for sharing your push-pull experience with us. That's fascinating.
All right.
Appreciate it. John in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Well, what's on my mind is first give applause to Biden for getting the hostages released from Russia.
Yeah.
And I've been following this trend. You know, I like to read a lot of international stuff, but I would think what Biden should do right now and other European countries to start doing is to contact Americans who are in China and Russia and or Iran to the State Department and have them removed from the country. You know, issue a warning. We need to start doing that to stop this, basically, this extortion. If you go visit, you're more likely to be arrested, you know, and they've been doing it for quite some time. So I think now that he got these hostages released, send a no-go travel to these countries. I would warn also any businesses there through the not the State Department, but the counselors, you know, counselor's office, embassy. There we go.
Yeah.
The embassy to get in touch with these companies. Say, hey, we're planning on pulling out citizens, U.S. citizens.
I can guarantee you, U.S. citizens in those countries have been warned. By the way, number one, Joe Biden finalized the negotiations and sealed the deal on this hostage release an hour before he announced he was not going to be running for re-election. That's wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Impressive.
And then secondly, you were talking about, you know, people just going over to visit the woman with the very Russian-sounding name who was released this morning. Who is a U.S. citizen, is a dual national. She's also a Russian citizen. And she went back to Russia to visit her mother, who was, you know, I don't recall if it was for her birthday or because she was ailing or what, but she just planned on going into the country for a few days, visiting mom, and then coming back. And of course, they arrested her. So, yeah.
Right. And that's my main thing about this. Putin, in my view, he's losing Ukraine. This is desperation time, and desperate men do desperate things.
Yeah.
So it's basically all the Western people, people from the United States or Germany or whatever. Yes, you might have relatives to go there, but know that you're going to be a target once you get in there.
Yep, there you go, John. No, you're absolutely right. Yep, thank you, John. Good one. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, Tom. The recent Axios poll that Kamala is 20 points ahead among young voters, the Morning Consult poll, that she's 11 points ahead in Michigan and in 5 other battleground states, is just terrific news, Tom.
Yeah.
And Dan Bongino, the Secret Service agent who was bumped off of Fox News.
Yeah, I used to debate him on my TV show all the time. Not the brightest bulb on the tree.
He is now on KBC Los Angeles. He is warning his listeners not to be too cocky about the November election, and we should probably heed that advice as well, because the Republicans are good at October surprises, Tom.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right, Larry. Never take anything for granted. I mean, we certainly learned that lesson painfully in 2016. Larry, thanks. Thanks for the call. Good one. Mike in Chicago. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Yes, hi. Going to kind of talk about Judge Cannon and what she did to Jack Smith in Florida. I'm not usually one to dive into, I guess this might be a conspiracy theory, but I have been wondering if there's a possibility that she had been, prior to this decision, having conversations with anybody at the Heritage Foundation, possibly members of SCOTUS, someone at the GOP, and then they was given the go-ahead to pull the trigger on that decision, because like you said before, she never made any ruling where he could appeal, thus lose the case. And
until,
I'm thinking
until
that
she went for
that,
broke on the first day of the RNC, of the convention.
Right, but I'm wondering if she was given the go-ahead, because it says it's in the bag that we got the fix. Yeah. The fix is in, so he'll do whatever he wants. I don't know if there's, because he's going to appeal. I haven't heard where it's gone since then, but I don't know.
No, it's up in the air right now. Yeah, and you'll recall Trump had made a comment at one point that she would be a good candidate for the Supreme Court. So my guess is that she just took this and ran with it because she wants to be the next Supreme Court justice, and she figured that the best thing that she could do for Donald Trump would be on the opening day of the Republican National Convention to drop her decision, basically, ending all prosecution of Donald Trump for stealing classified documents and sharing them with spies from other countries, the Espionage Act violations. That's my theory, Mike. I mean, you may be right. She might be coordinating this with Heritage or the Trump campaign or the RNC or somebody else. I think, though, that, Trump dangled this in front of her and she leapt at it. Mike, I got to run, but thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Speaking the truth, Donald Trump would really rather you didn't know. I'll be right back with your calls. It's 46 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Daniel in Kane, Pennsylvania. Hey, Daniel, what's up?
Yes, sir. I'd like to talk about the information that's going out to the veterans. Mm-hmm. My whole family, including my father and my grandsons, have all been in the military. And I talked to my one grandson who has 13 years in the Navy the other day, and I told him about what Trump said about suckers and losers being in the military. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to harp on this, because I think there's a lot of votes for the veterans if you could get the truth out to them. I
think you're right. And that's why, Trump lied about it, in that debate and said, oh, no, I've got 13 people who said I never said that. I'm believing the four-star general over Donald Trump.
Right. And I think it has to be the time, the location, and the place where he said this stuff.
Oh, it was. He said one of them. He made one of those comments when he was in France, and he made one of those comments when he was at Arlington National Cemetery.
Well, I thought he was in the Netherlands too when he said that he was suckers and losers. So
it may have been. It was the commemoration around the the World War II.
Right, and anyway. That's what I have to say. That should be harped on constantly, because I think there's a lot of vets votes that they're missing if they knew the truth.
I agree with you, Daniel. And the fact that he pushed back so vigorously shows how politically deadly he realizes that is. Daniel, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Lee in Sepulveda, California. Hey, Lee, what's on your mind today?
What's on my mind is what you said about can our democracy exist with Fox News and right-wing radio and all that. I want to go to a little teeny quote by Thomas Jefferson, since you quoted Madison earlier about war. Jefferson said, "Newspapers are the first of all human contrivances for generating war." And so now that's all our new contrivances, electronic, the media, and really. I went to something called STUN. It's a Shift the Unfit Narrative. And this guy presented this thing about news. I'm not going to say it on the air, but it is very harsh and separates Fox News from, like free speech radio, like what you're doing. It is powerful. So I'm looking forward to you hearing of it. It's going to rock the world. Yeah. It's going to stun the world.
Interesting. Okay, Lee, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll check it out.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, this is a big question. Is democracy? How badly is democracy being damaged in the United States by right-wing media that continuously lies about what's actually going on? Germany just banned a right-wing publication. They just put them out of business, the government. I'm not calling for that. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment, and I think you should be able to say anything no matter how offensive it is. But, when foreign billionaires come into the United States and build media empires specifically to get people frothing at the mouth and hating each other as a business model. I mean, this is what Rupert Murdoch did in the United Kingdom. It's what he did in Australia. It's what his father did before him, Sir Keith Murdoch in Australia. There's a big problem there. I don't know what to do about it, but there's a big problem there. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Recently, I did an op-ed and a little rant here about what happens when you raise the top income tax rate on morbidly rich people to 90%. How, that helps reduce income inequality and funds the government, all kinds of good, positive things. What about corporate taxes? We really need to go back to the 50% top corporate income tax rate that we had under Dwight Eisenhower, for example. The reason why is not on the assumption that we're going to collect all that money, but what it does is it causes corporations to change their behavior, to do things to try to get tax deductions so they don't have to pay that in taxes. And what are the main things they do? They develop new products. They do research and development. They become more competitive. They open up new stores. They pay their employees better. They offer better benefits. All of these things are 100% tax deductible and thus lower their corporate income taxes and help out America. You can read all about it over at HartmannReport.com.
We share our hopes, we share our dreams. In this talk show world, we're on the same team.
Welcome back, 9 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I just wanted to quickly mention, I don't know why we don't go back to the term yellow journalism, which is what Fox does. And it's historical and people know what it means. I think it would be a lot stronger.
I think our generation knows what it means, Bill. I'm not sure that young people do, but I get your point.
Right.
There needs to be a name. We need a good adjective. I mean, the whole yellow journalism thing came about because in the 1890s and early 1900s, there was this incredibly popular cartoon. It was called The Yellow Kid. And that what's his name? William Randolph Hearst hired the cartoonist away from Pulitzer's newspaper in New York and used that to launch his own newspaper in New York that was kind of like Fox News. It was full of sensational stuff. And that's where the term yellow journalism came from. But there's nobody alive today who remembers the Yellow Kid.
Right. But what I wanted to talk about is Project 2045, when whites are no longer majority. And how do you prepare for that when things have to become equal? And whatever they're doing now.
I think we just gradually evolve into it, Bill. I mean, we're getting there step by step. You've got a black person on the Supreme Court. You've got a black and Indian person running for president of the United States. We have a black president. I think you just slowly evolve into it, and it's no big deal.
Okay, and DEI. She was elected to be Attorney General. She was elected to be Vice President. So I don't know where that figures into it. And she doesn't have a law degree, but she became a Attorney General.
She does have a law degree.
I mean,
the Republicans are saying she doesn't. They're lying.
Well, go figure it out.
She passed the bar. Yeah. No, there's just the level of Republican lies around Kamala Harris are just breathtaking. Bill, thank you for the call. Ruth in West Los Angeles. Hey, Ruth, what's up?
Hi. First of all, I want to thank you. I'm from KPFK, and you do wonderful things to help us out.
Thank you.
And about the, just a quick aside, I may have even learned this from you. Aileen Cannon was in the Federalist Society, and I would really wonder whether she was a Leonard Leo, child or not.
I think you could bet on it. I mean, not literally a child, but yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, two quick things. One is, I don't understand why Merrick Garland can't start investigating all these voter purges. I mean, I don't know what else he does with his time, but
we don't know that he's not. But the problem is they're not illegal. The Supreme Court in 2012, in this case that was called Husted versus U.S., and John Husted was the Ohio Secretary of State, and he was purging people left and right, mostly in Cincinnati, mostly black people in Cincinnati from the voting rolls, which is why Ohio became so red and so reliably red. They just basically don't let Democrats vote there. And he got sued. I believe it was the ACLU. I could be wrong. But anyhow, he got sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, he can do that. No problem. Now, the Supreme Court back in the 80s, when Republicans were purging voters, for something like 30 years, the GOP was operating under a restraint, a something order. I forget the legal term, that prevented them from doing these kind of purges. But the Supreme Court legalized all that in 2012. That's if he's not investigating them, that's probably why.
You're amazing what you know. The last thing I wanted to quickly say is I hope that Kamala Harris does not choose Shapiro, and I happen to be Jewish. I don't think the country is quote unquote ready for a black and a Jew to be running the country. That's not casting aspersions at all. It's just saying what.
I get that. I just whenever I hear that, Ruth, I remember when one of the number 2 guy I think in California in the California Democratic Party told me on this program back in 2008 or 2007, late 2007. That Californians should not vote for Barack Obama because there's no way a black man could ever get elected president.
Okay, all right. And I would wonder whether she should be considering Jason Crow. I don't know why anybody hasn't brought him up. He's a member
of the House, isn't he? Is he not?
Pardon?
He's a member of the House?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think a House member has had that VP or presidential position since John Quincy Adams. Typically it's either senators or governors. But I could be wrong. But that's my recollection. But we'll see. Ruth, thanks for the call. We're hitting the top of the hour here. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Is the Fed chair trying to get Donald Trump elected by keeping high interest rates? We'll talk about that right after this break, and then I'll be picking up more of your calls. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have been conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from one realm to another. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalries that have connected the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated political resolve, and most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability,
In an unprecedentedly interconnected world, there's perhaps no more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of a national financial system during the Civil War, and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis by
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. Jake Johnson wrote a fascinating piece over Common Dreams today. He's actually writing about another group. It's the Revolving Door Project. Pardon me, I sneezed. It's an anti-corruption watchdog group, and they're focused on Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed. And you know what's going on? Another sneeze. What's going on with the Fed? They are suggesting, and Jerome Powell. Well, first of all, what happened was yesterday the Fed Open Market Committee, which sets interest rates, met and voted and decided that they were not going to lower interest rates right now. And in fact, in June, inflation fell faster than expected. I mean, it's at 3% annually. And for the last 2 months and maybe 3 months, I'd have to go back and look, but the last 2 months, we've had either zero or negative inflation. Now, month to month, the numbers are not as meaningful as quarterly, and they're not as meaningful as annual, but we're at 3% right now. Keep in mind, during his entire 8 years as president, Ronald Reagan never got inflation below 4.1%. Zero. Never did. Excuse me. And so Rakeen Mahmoud, the chief economist of the Groundwork Collaborative, said Wednesday the Fed's sky-high interest rates are causing more economic pain than the inflation they're trying to combat. A senior researcher at the RDP, Kenny Stansel, said the FOMC's decision to maintain high interest rates, despite all evidence showing the need for an immediate cut, does not preserve the Fed's independence or make Powell apolitical. It makes him a shill for the Republican Party's anti-worker, pro-Wall Street priorities. Senators Elizabeth Warren, John Hickenlooper, and Sheldon Whitehouse from Massachusetts, Colorado, and Rhode Island, respectively, wrote, quote, "The economic data suggests that the Fed fund rate should be lower than it is now." The current rate is 5.25%, sometimes as high as 5.5. They went on to say a rate cut at your meeting this week would represent the polar opposite of a political intervention. See, the Republicans are out there squealing about this, and Donald Trump in particular, saying, well, they can't cut rates now because that'll, juice the economy and that'll help Joe Biden in the election. So Warren, Hickenlooper, and Whitehouse are saying, no, it would be the opposite of a political intervention. They said, indeed, given that the data appears to clearly justify cutting rates, the failure to do so would indicate that the Fed is giving into this bullying and is putting political considerations ahead of its dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices. Excuse me. They note one of the most widely followed monetary policy guidelines suggests the rate should be cut by 150 basis points to 4% in July. They added, refusing to follow the economic data and succumbing to political threats would be a subversion of your mandate. We urge you to make monetary policy in the interest of the American public, not a particular political party. And I think their point is well taken. I mean, you go back and you look at Fed fund rates and recessions, And more often than not, when the Fed raises interest rates substantially for a long period of time, it's followed by a recession. I mean, it just tips the economy into a recession. Now, we've got extraordinary stimulus out there with the CHIPS Act, the Build Back Better Act, the American Rescue Plan. You've got some over 50,000 construction projects happening across the United States right now being funded by these programs. And that's kind of pushing against the drag on the economy that's the impact of high interest rates, which is, arguably a good thing. But how long that can last, how long we can sustain that is at this moment an open question. So anyhow, I wanted to share that with you. I know Larry from Los Angeles calls in all the time and is convinced that Jerome Powell is a political actor and in fact, he calls him a fascist, trying to throw America into a recession. I honestly don't know. I'm willing to give Jerome Powell the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are, in fact, just trying to wait a little bit and say, we're gonna figure out what's going on here. But it's stirring up some real controversy. So, all that said, what's on your mind today? Picking up your calls here, Pete in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Pete, what's on your mind? What's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. Brings some light into the darkness. But yeah, Tampa, one of the last Democratic strongholds in Florida. Don't give up on us.
Okay.
And my question is, all these Republican officials that have been elected in these red states to handle the voting, a lot of them have come out and said that they wouldn't certify the vote. And my question is, what is the Justice Department and the Biden administration going to do if that happens?
Yeah, and nobody knows right now, Pete. It's a big question. Rachel Maddow really threw this into the national spotlight on Monday night with her program in which she raised this question. Paul from Woodinville pointed out earlier, I had noted that the Constitution says that it must be a majority of the electoral votes that goes for the president. I was concerned that, if any states didn't certify, that we would be below that 270 threshold, which constitutes a majority right now, and therefore it would get thrown to the House. But Paul's point was the Constitution says of the appointed electors, and so if they're not certified, they're not appointed, and so therefore what might look like a plurality or a majority of less than 270 would still be enough to get somebody as president. The problem would be if they refuse to certify in swing states that Biden won, and no doubt that is their strategy. And then they could arguably throw the election to Trump. We're working on trying to get one of these really high-powered election lawyers on the program. There's a couple of them who've been on with us before. This is a question that is not going to go away, and I've seen a couple of election lawyers come out and say, "Don't worry, the new modifications to the Electoral College Count Act, rather, are going to make this much harder to game." Others have pointed out that there were people who tried to refuse to certify elections in the past, in the 2022 and 2020 elections, and basically the courts came in and said, if you do that, you're going to jail. You're in violation of your
so the courts
job.
Are standing strong.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if it goes before Eileen Cannon, I don't think you're going to see that kind of response. So the question is which court.
We know what side of bread's buttered on for that one.
Oh, she wants to be on the Supreme Court.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Pete.
No doubt.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for taking my call. Regarding fact-checking Trump, as you recall, the CNN debate with Trump and Biden was disastrous, but I think a big part of the problem was that CNN did not fact-check all the lies that Trump spewed out.
I agree.
And and so my thing is that if Kamala Harris does a debate with Trump, they have to make sure that they fact-check this guy because he's going to lie through his teeth as he usually does. And another thing is that I think it will be a good idea as a campaign or an ad campaign that they should do a fact-check campaign on Trump as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, and I think a lot of the ads probably, in a way, indirectly anyway, are probably fact-checking him. I agree with you that the big problem with the so-called debate, I can't even call it a debate, was that Trump wasn't fact-checked. On the other hand, Biden seemed to be in no shape to fact-check him. And I suspect that in a debate with Kamala Harris, even if the moderators are not fact-checking, she will. She knows the issues really well. She's quick on her feet. I'm not so worried about that. The problem was, Joe Biden was struggling to get his words out, and as he has much of his life, but that's no longer an issue. So
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think fact checking is an important. Did you see his appearance yesterday before the National Association of Black Journalists?
Oh yes, it was horrible. I cannot believe the things that were coming out of his mouth.
Well, they fact checked him in real time. And God bless him. I mean, especially the woman from ABC News. I'm forgetting her name, but she was so good. I mean, she just, and then Trump got so flustered he stole her water bottle.
She was asking some really tough questions, and he didn't like that, and it was really, really good.
Yeah, and he should, he had an opportunity there. He should have welcomed that. He should have said, that's a tough question, and I understand that, people might have misinterpreted things I've said in the past, and thank you for that question.
Trump is incapable. Yeah, Trump is incapable of doing that.
That's correct.
Yeah, the guy is a racist, and that he showed his true colors.
Yeah, and he's incapable of grace. And that's what it would have taken. Correct. It would have taken a little bit of grace. And
thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Alfredo. Good talking to you. 16 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Speaking the truth, some multinational corporations would really rather you didn't know. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The National Security Agency just came out and said that this prisoner swap was the most complicated in history. It was the biggest since the Soviet Union. An amazing accomplishment. And welcome back, Mary in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Mary, what's up?
Well, hi, Tom. I'd like to remind the people in Wisconsin that August 13th, there's a primary election coming up. But most important about that, the Republicans are asking us to change the wording of our Constitution to make it harder for our governor to be able to allocate where our federal money is going to go.
Really?
And to make matter, there's two referendums. I had my ballot already, and I sent it in. There's two referendums, and they're so confusing. You cannot figure out what it means because, of course, they want to change the wording, and they don't want us to really know what we're signing. But
so, are you suggesting that for people in Wisconsin who are listening to the program that they should be voting no on those two referenda?
Absolutely. And a couple of places I've seen it on the TV urging us to vote no. And my son, who said the AFL-CIO, came out and said vote no. And so I think they're using the August low turnout to be able to push these referendums through. So
of course they are, yeah. And is the Republican primary more contested than the Democratic primary? Are there more likely to be more Republican voters?
I think so. Tammy Baldwin is on there, and of course Eric Hauge is running against her. And I don't know who's running against Mark Pocan, but he was on there. I can't remember who else is on the ballot, but the two referendum questions, I think, are the really important ones.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate the call. Miriam in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, Miriam, what's on your mind today?
Yes, again, thank you for everything you do, Tom. I have this funny feeling about what just happened, your last comment about the prisoner exchange. You know, everybody knows that Putin wants Trump in, you know.
Yeah.
And you said, and I was shocked when I heard this, is that about an hour before President Biden had made the announcement that he was going to step down, he had already finished the negotiations for that prisoner swap. Could he have put himself as part of the deal? I'll step down, and of course Putin's going goody gumdrops, you know. But I'll step down, and you can give us these prisoners. And I'm just wondering, because the you know, an hour later and an hour later, you know, what happened, you know, that day.
If there is
also.
No, well, let me just respond to that, Miriam. We just have 30 seconds.
Sure.
I think if that is an element in this, in Putin's calculations, Putin has pretty good spies in the United States, and the fact that Biden was preparing to step down was not that tightly held a secret. So my guess is that Putin knew that if Biden steps down and Kamala Harris is the nominee, that Donald Trump can't beat her. There's no way. And that's why he went ahead and said, okay, let's do this deal. I think that, because Trump had come out and basically asked Putin to hang on to these guys until after the election. And, Putin stabbed him in the back here, I think you could argue. In fact, today, a reporter asked Biden and said, Trump said if he was president, he would have done this with not having to give up anything. And Biden said, then why didn't he when he was president? And Paul Whelan was taken prisoner while Trump was president. So, Miriam, I got to run, but thank you for the call. We'll be right back. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news. It's misleading, it's wrong, it's designed to confuse. It will watch your brain and make you mean. Turn off the noise and say the truth unseen. They profit from division and from the seeds of hate. They turn our friends to enemies and twist the public fate. They shout with indignation while hiding what is true. Don't let them take your kindness. Don't let them poison you. Don't listen to Fox.
Welcome back. 22 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Matt in Greenville, Ohio. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for having me on. I wanted to talk about the Democratic messaging a little bit. I really love the fact that calling them weird is putting their skin so bad, but especially when things like calling them fascist or racist, they shrug off as no.
They like that. They think it makes them seem tough and strong, and they want their base to know that they're racist. So yeah, weird. Really, what's with the orange makeup? What's with the giant rat's nest on your head comb over? What's with all this weird behavior? I like it, Matt.
And the reason I was bringing up calling them fascists is the policies they're looking to implement. So they're talking about implementing martial law, having armed soldiers in our cities, and rounding up brown people for detention camps to be deported. And one thing that I haven't heard anyone say, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but why isn't anyone calling what they want, their policies they want to implement, a police state? From the crowd that for decades cried about jackbooted thugs, coming in and taking their guns, and it seems like they're just fine with that as long as it's not their house and out in BFE that is getting knocked on.
Yeah, good question. Why aren't there's strategies or tactics referred to as police state tactics? That's let me ponder that one, Matt. Perhaps we should begin doing so. I think you're absolutely right, Matt. Thank you for that. That was a good one. Ray in Chicago. Hey, Ray, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I didn't hear earlier when you were speaking about Sidney Powell continually keeping the inflation rate
Lewis
high.
Powell, yeah.
Oh, Lewis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't understand why more people aren't talking about that, because it's got the Republicans thinking that this is all Joe Biden's fault, and it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the inflation was caused by the pandemic. It has hit every country in the world, and the United States right now, unique among countries in the world, has the lowest inflation rate in the world. I mean, outside of any, there may be some economies that are just, falling apart, but that, of functioning economies in the world, we're doing the best. We're doing really, really well. And I'm of the opinion that Powell should have lowered interest rates at least a quarter point, just a statement of confidence, that we're moving in the right direction. But he didn't. And
but didn't he say? And I mean to interrupt you, but didn't he say at the beginning of the year that if the economy continued to go as it was going at the beginning of the year, then he would probably be lowering the inflation rate, probably 6 times?
I don't recall the number of times he said that he probably would. I think the conventional wisdom was that there would probably be 3 lowering of rates, but I'd have to go back and look at the old news stories. But yeah, he did come out and say that he expected, and it may well happen in the next couple of months. I'm not giving up on it, but yeah, I think it's a big deal, and frankly, I mean, right now, anybody whose economic well-being is influenced by interest rates, a car loan, a home mortgage, credit card debt, revolving debt, buying furniture on time, whatever it may be, they're being hurt. That part of the economy, those parts of the economy that are interest sensitive, are really being battered by a year now of a little over a year of 5% plus base interest rates, giving us 20 and 30% interest rates in things like buying used cars and credit cards and things, and it is time to slow that down and to bring those numbers down. Ray, thank you for the call.
I think that's good. Okay, thank you.
Yep, good talking to you. 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of this break here at the bottom of the hour, so stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk radio for the rest of us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We're right back with your calls on the other side of this. Stay tuned.
Book Club is Under the Influence, Putting Peer Pressure to Work by Robert H. Frank, and I'm reading from the prologue. That we are more closely connected to one another than most of us realize is an old idea. An important variation dates from 1929, when Hungarian writer Frigyes Karinthy published a short story entitled Chains. 2 of the story's main characters speculate that any 2 living people can be connected by a chain involving no more than 5 acquaintances. That some such chains exist is hardly surprising, since most of us can think of people in distant locations to whom we're connected through a small number of intermediaries. The man bites dog aspect of Karinthy's conjecture is that almost any 2 people, A and E, could be linked by a chain like A knows B, B knows C, C knows D, who knows E. One of the first systematic attempts to test this claim came in the 1960s with a series of experiments by the psychologist Stanley Milgram. In it, he sent packages containing a small booklet to 96 people chosen at random from the Omaha, Nebraska telephone directory. His cover letter asked them to try to forward the booklet to a specific residence of Boston, Massachusetts, through a chain of personal acquaintances. He told them the name and address of the Boston resident, that he worked as a stockbroker, and that the first person in their chain should be somebody they knew on a first-name basis. Milgram also advised them to choose someone they believed, presumably based on the target's location and occupation, could be socially closer to the target than they were themselves. Subsequent recipients in the chain were asked to forward the same instructions. Many of the Omaha recipients undoubtedly tossed Milgram's booklet in the trash, so it's remarkable that the Boston target received 18 of the 96 packages. The average number of links in the 18 chains was 5.9. But the now familiar expression 6 degrees of separation would not gain broad currency until many years later, when John Guare's play by that name premiered on Broadway in 1990. The concept became a meme in full when 4 Albright College students introduced 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon in 1994, a game designed to measure the professional proximity of an actor, living or dead, to the American film star Kevin Bacon. An actor has a Bacon number of 1, for example, if he or she appeared in the same film with Bacon. Someone who appeared in a film with another actor who appeared in a film with Bacon has a Bacon number of 2, and so on. The average Bacon number is 2.95 among actors who have one. In that group, even the actor most distant from Bacon, William Rufus Shafter, has a Bacon number of only 7. Shafter, a Union Army officer during the Civil War, appeared in 2 films in 1898. For academics who study social connectedness, the 6 degrees concept gained little traction until 1998. That's when the sociologist Duncan Watts and the mathematician Steve Straga published their landmark paper, Collective Dynamics of Small World Networks in Nature. In the years since then, this paper has provided the mathematical foundation for the analytical tools that social scientists have been using with such remarkable success to study how ideas and behaviors spread through populations like infectious diseases. It has already been cited by other scholars more than 38,000 times and is one of the few papers ever published to be among the most widely cited works in multiple disciplines. In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins coined the term meme, which Webster now defines as an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. The meme is to cultural transmission, Dawkins argued, as the gene is to biological transmission. One of Charles Darwin's central insights was that natural selection favors genetic variations that enhance the individual organism's ability to survive and reproduce. Much of the time, the same variations also benefit larger groups, but often not. For example, an inclination to cheat when no one's looking might benefit individuals, but widespread cheating almost always makes matters worse for groups. It is the same with memes. The memes that propagate most successfully are often ones that benefit both individuals and groups. But here too, not always. As the legal scholar Jeffrey Stake has argued, ideas should not be treated as inert products, but as living things that sometimes exert some influence over their environment. Some of the ideas are more adept at surviving than others, and the ones that survive will not necessarily be good for humans. It is often hard to evaluate whether a specific behavior even qualifies as a meme, and if so, whether its consequences on balance are positive or negative. Yet sometimes the evidence is clear. We know, for example, that the strongest predictor of whether people will take up smoking is the proportion of their close friends who smoke. Smoking is thus clearly a meme. The negative health consequences of smoking are also conclusively documented, and most smokers themselves express regret over having started. By definition, then, smoking unambiguously qualifies as a socially destructive meme. On the other side of the ledger, we have compelling evidence that the adoption of photovoltaic solar panels is both socially contagious and almost uniformly positive in terms of environmental consequences. Accordingly, few would object to calling the practice a socially beneficial meme. Adam Smith, widely considered the father of economics, is often cited in defense of the claim that competitive markets produce the greatest good for the greatest number. The book is Under the Influence by Robert H. Frank.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. So back in 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt became president, we were in the depths of the Great Depression. He raised the top income tax rate on billionaires from 25% to 90%. The ultra-rich were screaming, and here's what he had to say.
A number of my friends who belong in the very high upper bracket have suggested to me on several occasions of late that if I am re-elected president, they will have to move to some other nation because of high taxes here. Now, I will miss them very much.
He just took it right to them, right? Now, what came out of that was the world's largest and fastest growing and first major middle class. We can do this again. We just have to raise taxes on rich people. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Morning sun shining bright. Another day feels so right. Coffee brewing started slow. The simple life, let it flow.
Just a reminder that tomorrow, for the entire third hour of our program, this hour, Dr. Marty will be with us answering your questions about your pets. This is an homage to cat ladies and dog bros for Kamala. There you go. Get it right. And okay, and right now I'm picking up your calls on anything else. So Catherine in Baltimore, Maryland. Hey, Catherine, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Yes, regarding the shenanigans that they're going to be doing to mess with the certification, CREW, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, has an article which was updated on July 15th. And what they've done in Georgia is the counties have made a proposal to the state election board to amend the words. The Georgia law makes clear that election certification is a ministerial and non-discretionary function. They want to change that to make it it's not mandatory, it's discretionary.
In other words, right now in Georgia, if an election official refuses to certify, they could be prosecuted, arguably, or at least held to account legally, and they want to make it so that they can't be? Is that what am I understanding correctly what you're saying?
No. What they're saying is they don't have to certify.
Right
and
now.
The law clearly says that they do, but it also says here in the article that several of those counties did not certify. But I guess he had enough votes that it didn't matter if or whatever. Right. But it is absolutely ridiculous because this would just, and it also says that they can have plenty of time to resolve allegations of error or election fraud through the courts and drag this whole thing out. So maybe in March we know who's president. So it's a great article.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Sounds interesting. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Yep. James in North Hollywood, California. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Yes, hi. Thanks for your work. I love your show.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm just thinking, I've been around for 73 years. I'm just wondering if they'll come up with some kind of October surprise like they usually do. And I'm thinking maybe Trump would negotiate with Putin and try to end the war or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think those doors have closed. An October surprise wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, Reagan did it by cutting a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages. Nixon did it by cutting a deal with South Vietnam to blow up the peace talks that Lyndon Johnson had worked out. I don't know if George W. Bush had an October surprise. I don't think so. I think he was just coasting on the good feelings around 9/11 and his phony wars. All the lies that he told. We didn't really figure out all those lies until after he was reelected. But, it wouldn't surprise me. I just can't imagine what it would be. Although, nobody could have imagined, back in '68 that Nixon would blow up the Vietnam peace talks, and or in 1980 that Reagan would blow up the, Carter's efforts to get the hostages back. So, I
just wonder if maybe the Democrats have some kind of, think tank where they're trying to come up with all kinds of different scenarios that they would have to counter if something like that were to happen,
I don't know. I hope so, James. And if people have thoughts about what Trump might be able to pull off as an October surprise. I mean, actually getting the hostages released would work against Trump, just like it did today. I don't know. It's if anything, probably his coordination with Netanyahu trying to create a larger war in the Middle East and drag the United States into it. Trita Parsi is out today talking about that and how he thinks that Netanyahu is trying to amp up the war because he knows that once the war is over, he loses office, he loses power, and he goes to prison. And he doesn't want that to happen. And of course, Trump is trying to keep out of prison too. So these guys, and Netanyahu went down to Mar-a-Lago this week. So, or was it last week? Whenever he came here. I don't do time well anymore, but it's never have actually. But
that's all a possibility, I suppose.
That's the only thing that occurs to me. But we've got a great brain trust among all our listeners. Maybe people have other suggestions. James, thanks for the call. That was a good one. Gar in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
How you doing there, Tom?
Good. What's up?
You're having a very interesting program. I just hope I can add something to it. My thing is, the media is treating Trump like he's a 3-year-old baby. I mean, this joker got 34 felonies, raped women, and they legitimize him. I mean, he's on the ballot. You remember Bernie Madoff?
Yeah, I do.
And Michael Milken?
Yep.
And Martha Stewart?
Yep. They all went to prison.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah, no, he's done a whole lot worse than certainly Martha Stewart. I mean, I think they went after her because she was a Democrat, but, that's just me.
But the point that I'm trying to make is that I blame the Democrats and Republicans for legitimizing him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he should be nowhere near a ballot in a true civilized country.
I agree, Gar. I mean, 30 years ago.
Civilized country.
Can you imagine 30 years ago if somebody had said, someday a man is going to run for president and be endorsed by a major party who has been convicted of 34 felonies, who has been convicted of having raped a woman and has been accused of it by 23 other women, including a 13-year-old girl, and has been convicted of fraud, has been convicted of robbing and, of stealing money from people who wanted to just get a university degree. And who oversaw a pandemic in which he was so incompetent that an unnecessary 500,000 Americans died.
But his good attribute? He's a drama queen, and the media love it.
Yeah, he is
a drama queen.
That's been his shtick his whole entire life. Is he knows how to manipulate the media. He learned that in his 20s.
You talked about Fox News, and you talked about Fox News. Fox News told you up front, we ain't entertainment, we ain't news.
Yep.
We entertainment.
Well, and we learned that during that lawsuit from the voting machine company, where Sean Hannity and all these other guys had to come in and say, yes, we lied to our viewers. In the background, we thought that what Trump was doing was wrong. We knew that he had lost the election, but we lied to our viewers anyway and said these terrible things about voting machine companies and whatnot because it made money for Rupert Murdoch, for the Murdoch family.
And the fact is, if you don't have to fact check it, Trump is a 34 felon criminal. That's a fact.
There you go.
Fact check.
There you go.
Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gar. Good one. Joe in Olympia, Washington. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Real quick, I have an idea for those folks out there who are proficient in making bumper stickers.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from John 8:44 in the Bible. And the entire context is just too long. But the statement, there is no truth in him. And then a photo or a picture of the visage of Trump.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I've got to reprise my, revisit my is Trump the Antichrist rant, because...
anyway, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good one, John. John hung up. It's 44 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the rest of us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be right back with your calls. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Clay in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Hey, Clay, what's up?
Hi, Tom. So this deal with the children of Ukraine, there's a Frontline documentary called Children of Ukraine that I think you might be interested in seeing. It kind of follows some of the children as they're in the orphanages and such in Russia and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Because I get the impression that from when you talk about it that there's, and there's been trafficking from Ukraine, from what I can gather, since the 90s by people in Russia and other countries, these trafficking groups.
Sure. Well, and any documentary that is made in Russia that shows orphanages or anything else is done with the approval of the Russian government, and you see what the Russian government wants you to see.
But, I think Frontline is trustworthy. But you're obviously correct that there.
And Russia is the second largest producer of child pornography in the world. And you can look that up.
Well, I just haven't been able to find anything that shows great numbers of children being trafficked for sexual.
Well, that's because A, it's not illegal in Russia, and so there's no arrests, and B, even if it was, Putin and his government are not going to be pointing to it. They're not going to be, highlighting it. But, producing child pornography is not illegal in Russia.
Well, I would invite you to watch that Frontline program if you get a chance. I think it's just an hour, but it's called Children of Ukraine. But, Frontline's not going to lie to us.
When was it produced?
But it gives it this, I think maybe something like 8 months ago.
Okay, I'll check it out, Clay. Clay, thanks for the call. Joe in Seattle. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I've heard you talk many times about how the Republicans started pronouncing the Democratic Party as the Democrat, with emphasizing rats.
Yeah, it's been around forever, but Joe McCarthy was the guy who really put it on the map in the 50s.
Okay, well, I'd like to do the same thing to the Republican Party, given their policies on the environment and women, and mainly because who their leader is. I'd like to refer to them as the Rape Republican Party.
The Rape Republican Party. Yeah. Sadly, it's not going to stick. I mean, it took a major campaign by Joe McCarthy in the 50s to get Republicans to stop referring to the Democratic Party. And they even, and it really didn't become a thing, right across the entire party until Fox News came along. And with Fox News, ever since, they came into being in, 89, I think, they've refused to refer to the Democratic Party by its proper name, and they, following the Joe McCarthy slur. And now you've got every Republican saying it. I mean, yesterday, I was amazed. Trump said, at the National Association of Black Journalists, he said the Democrat Party, and nobody corrected him. It's like it has become so normalized, and it's a slur. It's an intentional slur, and against the world's oldest political party, a noble political party. So I am just horrified that this continues. I don't think that slandering or slurring them is the solution. I think calling it out is the solution. But I get what you're saying, Joe, and they are the Rape Republican Party.
Yeah.
They're supporting a rapist for president and a good friend of another rapist, Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, did you see the story? This, this is I haven't seen any confirmation of this, but it was on. I think it might have been on Drudge. the Ghislaine, or however she says her name, Maxwell, Epstein's partner, that she's going to do a tell-all in September or October. That'll be interesting. Joe, I got to run. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
In the heart of our hometown, where the streets are bustling around, we gather neath the morning sun. Together we can get things done. Every voice, every hand, together we can make a stand. Tag your interest, join the fight for our future, for what's right. Raise your
Republican Jason?
No, I'm not a Republican at all.
Okay. So what's up, Jason?
I just wanted to respond to the police state attack that the caller brought up earlier about why don't the Democrats use that line of attack on the fascists and what the Republicans want to do right now. And my response to that would be because they don't have a lot of credibility on that issue. Ever since the George Floyd protests, Democratic mayors and governors and Joe Biden himself have been lurched to the right and have been increasing police budgets and have.
I don't think that has to do with George Floyd. I think that had to do with the explosion of crime that happened during and immediately after the pandemic. The homelessness crisis just exploded in 2020, and it had been creeping up in the late in 18 and 19 during the Trump administration, and it's been going on for some time, but it really got bad in 2020 and 2021. And we saw this here in Portland. Homeless people basically took over downtown and were driving people out. And so, our mayor said enough already. We're going to crack down on this stuff. I don't think that's a bad thing, Jason.
Well, I guess I'm recalling back to the George Floyd protests when the police were intentionally targeting people's eyes and
a lot
blinded.
of that they certainly were calling that out here in Portland. You had federal troops coming in here wearing no name badges, kidnapping people off the streets. Our mayor was apoplectic. So
I guess
no.
my point, though, is that if the fascists are going to create a police state, the Democrats teed it up for them. And you can trace that all the way back to Obama when he was bringing surplus military equipment and giving it to police departments all over the country.
That was actually the 10, whatever it was, 1011 program, 1099 program, whatever it's called. That was started by Reagan. And it was continued by every president and has been continued by every president since then. And I'd like to see it stop. Jason, thanks for the call. Kurt in Ithaca, New York. Hey, Kurt, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Nice to talk to you. The thing that really gets me, going back to what Gore said earlier, was we basically got an adjudicated rapist with 34 felonies that tried to overthrow an election, right? And then he stole top security secrets. And we just normalize it. We don't talk about it. The media doesn't push him on it. They just talk about, what was the unemployment rate under Trump, which is a ridiculous thing to say. And then Andrea Mitchell says to her guest with a straight face, but is America ready to have a black woman president? And this is just, honestly, I'm sure she's a nice lady. She has great dinner parties or whatever. But that is a racist freaking question.
Yeah.
I mean, why don't we ask people, is America ready to have unintegrated swimming pools? It's ridiculous.
Is America ready to have an orange rapist as president?
Exactly.
But yeah, I get your point, and Andrea Mitchell's husband is Alan Greenspan. If you didn't know, I
did. Yeah.
She's always been a little to the right. So, Kurt, thank you.
Okay.
Your point was really well made. Thank you, Peter in Lawton, Oklahoma. Hey, Peter, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just got through reading an article there on the LA Times about the Oklahoma schools and religion being forced down the people's throats.
Yeah, your governor is requiring teachers to teach the Bible. How's that going to work out?
Yes, and I'm a part. Yeah, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and in the early 60s, we were taught nothing like that. We were taught history of the United States. In fact, the second half of sixth grade, we were taught about World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it was required at seventh grade to take civics.
Yep.
And but this is a fascist move, though. But if you look back in the 1930s Germany, they were doing the same thing. In fact, I'm not going to mention his name, but the leader said that we were a Christian movement.
Yeah.
And
no, he had his own. Hitler had his own. He had Reichsbishop Mueller was the guy who was put in charge of all religion in Germany. He committed suicide after the end of the war. He had the good sense to do so. But Hitler used religion. He used Christianity.
On every German soldier's belt buckle in German it says "God with us."
Yeah, Gott
and that's
mit
what's
uns.
scary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Hitler, his shtick, the whole Third Reich thing, was that this was ordained by Christ, that there should be a new German republic, and this new Reich, or this new kingdom essentially would comport with the kingdom of God.
Right.
Peter, I got to run, but thank you. Well said. Thank you so much for your calls and for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. And just a reminder, third hour tomorrow, Dr. Marty's going to be answering pet questions. Yeah, we need a break from politics every now and then. And this is, in honor of the cat ladies for Kamala and Kamala. So anyhow, thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!